Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to hop in. I'm going to get myself settled here. Shoot, I actually forgot to grab my water bottle. I will be right back. Okay. Hello. Happy Thursday. I'm going to shut the door right here. Okay. I love Thursdays. It's like Friday Junior. Okay. Oh, Heidi, I think this is your first time joining us, right? Did I pronounce your name correctly? Is it Heidi? Awesome. Hang on, I can't hear you. Hi, John. Just gonna give a few more minutes, maybe just like another minute or two. We have Krista's here, Juliana, Heidi, John, and Jonathan John. Hey. Okay, so I will get started in 1 minute. Oh, cool. What happened? Hey. Oh gosh. Did something to my screen. Oh, there we go. But then I couldn't undo it. All right, so we got a real sexy topic on the agenda today, guys. We're talking time management. Okay, so I'm actually really stoked that you guys are here to learn about time management. I know it sounds like painfully boring, but I think that's just because when you have ADHD, that's always the place that people go to. It's always like, well, you just need to learn how to manage your time better, right? It's like, use timers, get a calendar. And it's like, thanks for nothing, like it's like the concept that everybody kind of defaults to. And even ADHDers themselves, it's we beat ourselves up for time, and we kind of treat time as a villain. And I'm going to talk about that and how subconsciously that actually is doing something to your brain when we look at time as like an entity that is out to get us, or an entity that we like can't seem to control. But I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time talking about our thoughts about time. But I just want you to know that everything I say here, it's a suggestion. It is research based. It is, tested on me and my clients. And so I will tell you, I'll give you a heads up ahead of time. If there is a strategy, there's one strategy in particular that it's like, you know what, I'm still working on it. Like I have not quite mastered it. And I'm going to be very transparent and very upfront about it, because I feel like that happens a lot where people are like, well, just do X, Y, and Z and you'll figure it out. But it's like, okay, but in reality, how do you do that when, you have little kids at home, or, you have like a million sports schedules to manage, or you have a super demanding boss, or you have an unpredictable schedule? It's like, it's easy to say, well, just get, this planner, or just track your time or whatever. But then in the moment, things fall apart. And so I want to preemptively talk about when things fall apart and what to do when things fall apart. So some of the things that you'll hear today are things that you've heard before. But the thing with ADHDers, especially, is when we don't know the why behind why we're doing something, we're not going to want to do it. Like, we're not going to listen to just arbitrary advice. It's very hard for our brain to wrap our head around. Total side note, but it's like, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about this. Like my son's school, so my kids go to two different schools because of like scheduling things. I want them both at my daughter's school, but they only offer half day for my son's age. Anyway, so I'm like kind of bitter that he's at this other school, and I feel like maybe my brain is looking for like reasons to dislike them. But anyway, my daughter goes to like a very, it's the school that I volunteer at. I've told some of you guys about this. I volunteer on Tuesdays. I'm their unpaid social media manager because I just love them so much. It's like it's an alternative school. It's so cool. They do a lot of stuff outside, a lot of just like play-based learning and student-directed learning. Anyway, my son's school is more traditional. And they just feel like they have all these like arbitrary rules, and it like bugs me. And it really just like when I don't understand, I'm sure I have like some solid reasons, but like sometimes I don't sometimes I know the reason and I don't agree with it, and it like pisses me off. And so the point is, when we don't understand the why behind something, we're not going to do it. Like we're not going to do it. Or when we understand the why behind something, but we disagree with it, we're also not going to do it. Like they have this rule where like he can't bring his like little lovey. He's 3, okay? He can't bring his like little lovey to school because they're worried that like other kids will want to play with it and it may get lost. I'm like, so this is like his coping mechanism. It's like his thing that makes him feel safe. And it's like, if me as a parent, if I'm willing to take that risk of it getting lost, it's like, why not let the poor kid take the levity school? Anyway, I digress. So the point is, when we don't understand the why behind something, or when we can't get behind the why, we're not going to do it. And so hopefully today, even though I'm going to be talking to you about some strategies that you may have heard before, I want to talk more deeply about the why, and why these strategies will help us to get behind our schedules, our plans that we set for ourselves in a way that works with our ADHD brain. Okay, are we ready to get started? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so a couple of quick housekeeping things that I wanted to share. Hang on. Okay, so I'm just going to remind you again. So the setup of this class is going to be the same. So it's going to be, the first part is going to be me, kind of like teaching, hopefully not lecturing at you. I want you to chime in the chat as much as possible. But I'm going to be talking about time management strategies. And then the second part will be the live group coaching. So I would love to coach 2 or 3 of you that haven't gotten coached in the last couple of weeks. But if I don't have any new volunteers, you're obviously, welcome to be coached again. And I I blocked off the entire morning for this as usual. So this is like a very different way than other like memberships or workshops operated. I purposely wanted this to be untimed because I know that you paid a lot of money to be here, first of all. Second of all, I really feel so strongly, so passionately about this being the foundation of your ADHD journey that's why I wanted this to be on time. Like I wanted you to have all of the information up front, and then use our group as like an accountability partner to help you put those strategies in place. And so emotional regulation, overwhelm, and time management, like I think that's the trifecta right there. Like I think that's the basis of everything. And so I didn't want to leave anything out. Like I really didn't. Like I know that most of these are like, oh, it's capped at like 60 minutes or whatever. And I've tried to do that before, and I always felt like I was just like word vomiting on people, and then I wasn't getting to everything. And I was like, you know what? Just gonna make it untimed. I'm going to give them access to the recording. I'm going to break everything up so that they can rewatch the segments that they want to watch and not have to like, watch the whole thing. So I already set that up for the emotional regulation class, where each video is only, some of them are 5 minutes, some of them are 10 minutes long. I'm going to do the same for the overwhelm one, and then the same for this one as well, so that you can go back and rewatch the sections that you need. But again, I don't want to leave anything out, because that's just who I am. But okay, so I have a little request too. I'm going to post in Skool, and I'll email it to you as well. I would love if you can fill out a feedback testimonial form. Feedback/testimonial. If you don't want to write a testimonial, it's totally fine. You're not pressured to, but any feedback would be greatly appreciated. I mean, that's how I can make, my stuff that much better, is from hearing from you guys. I know what works for me, but I'm just one person. I've worked with clients, but like you're all different, right? And this is also a different style of how I have taught these workshops in the past. So again, always trying to make these even better. They're so important for my business. And then the testimonial side of things, whenever somebody can hear from a client, like how they have learned something from my class, I mean, it's just so powerful. So I really appreciate it in advance. I will post that in Skool. And then I have a bonus for you guys. So it wasn't originally included in this session, but I would love to offer a live bonus group session. So a bonus live group session. So same time next Thursday, it will just be live coaching. So now that we have, gotten to all that, well, we will have gotten to all the foundations after this class, emotional regulation, overwhelm, and time management, I would love to just do a straight up group coaching session. I know the past class sessions have been quite a time commitment, but this one will be capped at 1 hour, so because I want this to be doable, and I also want it to be a peek at what my membership will be like. So I know I've told several of you, and I've talked about this on social media, but I am going to be offering a membership after this workshop. You have access to Skool, the Skool community, and you have access to the Skool community until November 12th. Okay. And then I'm going to transition to a monthly membership. So if you want to like exchange, if you're not planning on continuing with the membership, you can exchange, information with people. Make sure you do that before the 12th. You will have access to the recordings for life. So they're housed on YouTube. So they're unlisted. So please don't share them. And then I will send you like all of the links. So you'll still have access to all of the recordings for life, but just the Skool membership will end, November 12th, unless you plan on continuing. I uploaded them to Skool as well as YouTube because I like how it's set up. Like with the classes, I love Skool. I've been in Facebook groups. I've been in Slack. I've been in another one is Circle, and Skool has just blown me away. I love it so much. I also in my membership want to take more advantage of the like the gamification. And you've seen a little bit of that already, where it's like, if you like, it gives you, points for like most comments or like most engagement. It also unlocks, I can set it up so it can unlock different courses, with your participation. So there's like an incentive to participate in the group. And with stuff like this, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. So I love that aspect of it. And it's just like so clean. Facebook, first of all, the level of distraction, I mean, for our executive functions, I mean, no, thank you. God bless. I can't. It like you sign on to check a group that you're in, and then all of a sudden you're looking at your kindergarten boyfriend's sister's dog. Like it's just such a rabbit hole, and I can't stand it. So I refuse to participate in that Facebook hodgepodge. And then like Slack, again, I do like Slack. I'm in another Slack group, but I don't like how you can only see the group messages if you're in the thread. Like I like how at Skool you can see everything on one page, but then you can still filter by like the different, the different tags. Anyway, I love Skool. I could talk about it all day, every day. But so, okay, just to recap where we're at, testimonial request, bonus session next week, same time, same place. And then my membership is coming up. So the membership will be $99 a month. And you can pause or cancel anytime. It will include 4 live group coaching sessions a month, so once a week. And I'm still trying to iron out the date. The benefits of like, joining with this first wave of people, you get to be my like beta group, is we get to discuss, like, one thing that I've toyed around with is like, okay, do I have the sessions at the same time, same day every week? Or do I move them around so that, it might help with people with different schedules or different time zones? That's something that I would like to talk about with my beta cohort. But it will be once a week, live group sessions, 1 hour, and then 1 deep dive per month. So a topic like, rejection sensitivity, or a topic like time management. We can always revisit time management. A topic like surfing your emotions. We'll do 1 deep dive a month so that you can slowly, like, expand your self-awareness and the tools and strategies that work with ADHD brains. So that will be the setup. I also plan on adding some workbooks that you can print out or use digitally to support you on your ADHD journey. I also hope to have in guest coaches as well. I'm very, very excited about that. I already have 2 in mind. One that has already agreed to cooperate, not cooperate, like to be a guest coach. Okay. And then another one that I have in mind that I'm really excited about. Okay. So that is the membership. So it will, just to be fully transparent, the membership will eventually be a $200 membership, but I will always honor the $99 price point for as long as you're a member. So if you join and you stay a member, it will always be, that price point. And that is, it's obviously not a replacement for therapy, but it will be an affordable way to track your progress, to have support, and it's ongoing. It's not like a start to finish course that you feel like you need to, like, show up to and make the most of. No, you'll always have access to the recordings as long as you're a member. If you can't make them live, you can always volunteer to be coached. If you're working through something, you can chat in school. We can support each other. It's a beautiful thing. I'm in a similar membership, and it's been such a pivotal part of my ADHD journey. So, okay. That is enough about the membership. I will post about it again in school. But let's talk time. Okay. I would like for you to write in the comments or in the chat, why do you think time is so much harder for you? What are your thoughts about time? What are the thoughts that come up in your day when you're thinking about what you have to do? What are some of the things that come up? Oh, I just saw John's comment. Facebook is being sued by 48 states attorney generals for the reason of, like, being such a time suck, or for something else?
Specifically, they're being sued because they are purposefully addictive to children.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, so Meta entirely, and so Instagram is a big part of it. There was a leak from I think it was Instagram, where they know that it's negatively affecting, especially like teen girls, and they don't care. They still continue to jack up the algorithm to just it's engagement at all costs. They don't care what effect it has on people. And so 48 different states attorneys generals are all together suing Meta at the same time. Yeah.
Amazing, dude. Purposefully addictive. Yeah, that's it. It certainly feels that way. And it's like a double whammy too, for children whose brains are still developing, and then also for ADHD adults. And it's like, I know that it's like, okay, well, there are benefits to it, right? It's like the connection, I learn stuff. I mean, talking about Instagram, for example, I do use it as like a vehicle to learn about things and to develop self-awareness. It's also, a big part of my business. But dude, like it's designed to be addictive, and that makes me feel like a pawn, and I don't like feeling like a pawn. And so it's you're right in that like they know and they're doing it anyway. It's very conflicting. I have so many conflicting thoughts about it. And then also raising children in this day and age is hard. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, this could really send me into the emotionally. I'm going to surf this emotion. And just keep in mind our thoughts about time. Okay. So Heidi said, I miscalculate how much time is needed. Oof. That's a big one. And we will get to that. The time blindness is a thing. It's due to the way that our brain is wired because of our executive functions. So John says, time management involves making the right priorities and decisions. Executive function. Yes. Keeping track of time blindness and focus, and being consistent. You nailed it. And so a lot of us, most of us have this awareness of why time is hard, but then again, getting behind the why and understanding the strategies that work for ADHD can really help to connect our knowledge of what we know to be true and what we want to happen, like to get the results that we want. So John said, regarding time, it's the nearsightedness to time that has been the most challenging for me. Nearsightedness being Russell Barkley's explanation. Yeah, do you mean like the way that I've heard it explained for, and I think this is from him, is that people with ADHD view time as now and not now. So like if something is happening tomorrow, that is not now, even though we need to be, yeah, he said exactly. That's such a perfect description of what it is. We do not differentiate between like, okay, I have this thing due tomorrow, so I should be preparing for it, for the next 4 days, or I have this thing due next week. So our brain doesn't work like that. We have to externalize a lot of that. That takes a lot of executive function. We see time as literally now, like I have a meeting with my boss in 5 minutes. Like, damn it. And let me throw together this presentation that I should have worked on, last week. So it's now and not now. The not now me is almost like a different person. That's exactly what it feels like. It feels like it's a different person. It's almost like this like disassociation of the thing that we know we need to do, because that is future me's problem. I'll let future me worry about it, right? And there's also this like problematic positive thinking of, I call it ADHD math. You know how like there's like a trend now where it's like, oh, girl math, boy math, there's ADHD math, where like we think that we have 50 hours in a day when we really only have 24. And we also are supposed to sleep for 8 of them. Problematic positive thinking is what it's called. Abby said, I also think I have the power to magically add more time to the day. Yeah, that's yep. Not just you, literally everybody in this virtual room, I'm sure, struggles with that, is thinking that we have more time than we actually do. Dobson said the not now is almost a different person. Oh, I said that. Yeah. If I did all the things I plan to do tomorrow, I would be a best-selling billionaire. Same. Same. It just so happens that the math ain't mathin', right? The things that I think I can do don't add up. And so I want to talk about some of those strategies for making time more visible. But so, okay, still, I know that this sounds very, kind of like nebulous, but it is important to talk about thoughts about time, because as we've learned in the first 2 sessions, our thoughts matter. And I don't think that, at least for me, this was news to me. Like, this is what finally made the connection in my brain is, oh yeah, I am telling myself these things about time. I am telling myself this story about time. That's a thought. That is a thought. And we now know how our thoughts directly impact our emotions, which impact our actions, right? The thoughts, emotions, actions triangle, that's where all of our results come from. So, okay, the reason that it's so much harder for us to manage our time is that we do lack the executive function necessary to perceive time as these neat little bundles of hours and minutes. So again, we see time as now and not now. And just to understand like why this is harder means that we can put the supports in place to help us. Because if we think that, we can just operate the way, neurotypical people can operate, we're not going to put the supports in place. And we're just going to use shame and urgency to motivate us to do things. And we all know how that never ends well. So in order to manage time, you need working memory to remember what it is you're supposed to be doing. You need self-restraint to stop yourself from doing the things you're not supposed to be doing. You need problem-solving skills. So these are all executive functions that we struggle with. We need problem-solving skills to prioritize what's important, what needs to be done first. We need emotional regulation to cope with negative belief patterns. It's hard to get anything done when you're anxious or upset, as we've talked about. So we need motivation, self-motivation, self-initiation to get started. And then we need self-awareness to understand why all of this is going on and be able to redirect. So the reason that I wanted to outline how our executive functions impact our ability to manage time is that this is supposed to be hard for you. It's supposed to be hard. It's not about, our lack of intelligence. It's not about us being lazy. None of these like shameful stories that we've told ourselves. There is a brain wiring. And again, we've talked about how our brain is wired for positive things too, right? For more creativity, for more empathy. We've talked about that. But I want to talk about how, because of that brain wiring, we also need to understand how we can level the playing field for us. And we're not going to get the results that we want if we don't put those supports in place. And so one of those supports is developing the awareness of the stories that we're telling ourselves. So I want you to put in the chat, what are your negative, repetitive beliefs about time? I'm going to give you a couple minutes and I'm going to read off some examples, okay? I know that a lot of these are going to resonate with you, okay? Where did the time go? There's never enough hours in the day. I feel guilty for losing track of time. If I can't get to the small things, I'll never get to the big things. I don't have time for this. There's something else I should be doing. That's a big one for me. There's always something else I should be doing. There's always something else that's more important. I never have enough time to do things the right way, right? A lot of that is rooted in perfectionism or black and white thinking. Yeah, a lot of shoulds. I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to do this right now. That's future me's problem. Ugh, I don't want to do this right now. This is gross. I can do this later. That's, a more like banal way of putting it, where it's not rooted in shame, but maybe rooted in problematic positive thinking. I do that. I do that a lot. I can do this later. I can do this when my kids are asleep. How about the fact that I'm tired, right? I always forget that part. I don't know where to start. That's a big one, a big time thought that I see a lot about. Oof, oh my God, Heidi, I'll just wake up early and do it. I'll just, this is literally my entire college career. I'll just wake up early and do it. Oh, my poor 19-year-old self. I'll just wake up early and do it. I'll just set my alarm for 3 a.m. Oh my God. And I'm still learning. This is gonna take too long. It'll never be perfect. I'm time blind. Like a lot of us, when we intellectualize the things that we know about ADHD, it's like, well, I'm time blind. It's like we use that as like our thoughts about time. Like, well, and then we just leave it at that. I don't have patience for calendars. It's a big one. I'm bad with time. Oh my gosh. How many of you have said that? I'm bad with time. I'm bad with time. Another big one is I'm bad with money, but today we're talking about time. Another one is this is taking too long. So all of these are thoughts, right? And I know that that's annoying to hear. And I know that it's gross, and you're allowed to have some resistance about this, because I can hear all of your thoughts Like, but Anna, I really don't have time for this. But Anna, things just come up. But Anna, I really am bad with time. You know, I've heard it all. I've heard it all. And these are all stories that I myself have told about time. But the stories that you're telling yourself about time matter. Because there's this idea of a cognitive bias, right? So a cognitive bias is like when we think something, then we start to look for all the evidence. Our brain starts to look for all the evidence of how that's true. So it's just like when we buy a blue car, and now all of a sudden we see all these blue cars everywhere. Or we hear about a new term. Oh my God. I was reading about like Schadenfreude. What's that? That word, that German word. And now all of a sudden, Schadenfreude, you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like you get pleasure in other people's pain. Anyway. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing this
Schadenfreude.
like, yeah, Schadenfreude. I'm seeing this like wacky word everywhere. So it's like this, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the story that we're telling about time matters, because if you're telling yourself, I'm bad with time, that is the evidence that our brain will find to prove that that is true. Or I always lose track of time, right? Like we're basically creating this self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'm going to talk about this more, but I also want to give you some ideas for some time producing thoughts. So obviously we can't produce or make more time, but there are some great thought options that are doable, that are not, you know, rooted in toxic positivity or problematic positive thinking. So, and I'm going to get to these, and I will post these in school as well, but some ideas can be, I do have time for this. Or what helps me is I have 10 minutes for this. I have 10 minutes for this. Like that helps a lot with the overwhelm and with the idea of like, I'll just get to that later. It's like, no, I have 10 minutes for this. I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. Nothing else matters right now. And what helps is using, you know, calendars, which I will get to. I will stay present with this task and finish it. B- work can change the world. Work that never gets done doesn't help anybody. There's a lot of good quotes around this where it's like, good is better than, or done is better than perfect is another one that I really like. I'm going to get this done no matter how uncomfortable I feel. That one is more for the, you know, the more strong-willed. Like if you're in a place where you're feeling determined, then that thought can help you. If you're in a place where you're feeling super overwhelmed and you know, you're feeling shame, like that's going to be a little much. But these are all, you know, examples of time thoughts that we can use. Just start, right? Just start can be another one. I'd rather do it now and get it over with than have to think about it all day. It's another one that has helped from time to time. I'm in charge here, right? I like, that's also like, you know, something I think of like when I'm thinking about the kids and like, it's like, you know, they're getting to me. It's like, you know, I'm the adult here. I'm the adult here, right? I'm in charge here. Time planning is time well spent. So this is a thought that we can use when we have the thought that like, I don't have patience for planners, or this is going to take too long. Like outlining, you know, like doing like planning my week is I don't have time for this. We could tell ourselves instead, time planning is time well spent. Especially if you learn how to plan your week in a way that supports you. What would the person with time management skills do right now? So like I will picture, you know, somebody that I think is good with time, like an expander, somebody that I look up to. It's like, what would, you know, one of my business coaches, Rich Webster, I always have his voice in my head. Like, what would Rich do? You know, like what would Rich do right now? That can sometimes help. Sometimes when we're feeling the pressure of getting something done in a certain amount of time, and that's the reason that we're not starting, sometimes I'll tell myself, it takes as long as it takes. It takes as long as it takes. So again, these might not stick just yet, these time thoughts, but I wanted to share them with you just to plant a little seed. And it sounds like some of you guys are doing that already. So John said, I've been trying to reframe tasks instead of I have to do this because I'm trying to say I enjoy doing this, the process of this. Oh, I love that. I love that. It helps with things like meditation, working out, writing. John, I love that. I love that so much. You're reframing. It's not about getting the task done. It's about the process. I've used a similar thought pattern too, where it's like it feels pointless to watch this training, or I'm working on my copywriting skills, and sometimes it's like, well, I need to be like creating reels or like planning content or whatever. But in reality, working on my copywriting skills, that practice is going to serve me. I'm not just creating something. It's like, here's this thing I made. It's about getting better at a certain skill. So I love that. Meditation, working out, writing, says the guy who hasn't meditated in 2 days. Psh, if you meditated 3 days ago, I'm still impressed. If you meditated even once this month, it's still a step in the right direction. Okay, so some other things to keep in mind is our thoughts create our results. So time in this scenario is the situation. Time is always neutral. It's our thoughts that we have about time. It's our thoughts that we have the situation that determine our emotions about it and the actions that we take from it. So even something as nebulous as time is something that we have thoughts about. Okay. And then if you need to, and this is something that's like, you're not going to jump from, I don't have time for this to done is better than perfect, but you may need to add a bridge belief. So using something like, I'm willing to produce a B minus, resume, for example. Like, let's say you're looking for a new job. It's like, in your brain, you think that in an hour, you're gonna, update your LinkedIn profile, you're gonna, revamp your resume, you're gonna send out, you're gonna blast it out to 20 different companies. And then when you're like 15 minutes in and you realize you're not gonna get to it all, it's like you jump ship or whatever. But if you tell yourself, I can create a B minus resume, that's something that's much more tangible, or I'm willing to start my job process, or I have 10 minutes to, update my LinkedIn, right? And we're going to talk about some specific strategies, okay? Those are just like a little teasers. Okay, so I want to share with you guys 6 strategies for time management. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, those of us with ADHD have a much easier time adopting new strategies when we understand the why. When it's arbitrary, it just goes in one ear and out the other. So we have a much better understanding. When we have a better comprehension of the why, the underlying purpose, the potential relevance, it has a better chance of sticking around. So if you're just arbitrarily telling yourself, I need to go to this 5 a.m. yoga class, like I need to exercise in the morning, but you don't understand the why behind it, it's not going to last very long, right? You might do it for a week and then you'll lose that momentum and you'll never go again. But when we understand the why, it can help increase our willingness to give our strategy a try, right? Especially if it's something that we've heard before, but we didn't really think would work for us. It also empowers us to take ownership over our experience so that we can make more empowered decisions. So it can help generate like a curiosity, a self-awareness. So again, you've probably heard a lot of this advice over and over again, but if you're not using it, it's probably because you don't understand the why. So today I want to help break down how it specifically relates to ADHD brains, and then how we can start to implement them little by little. Okay. And then one thing that I would suggest is to not overhaul all of, what you're doing with these 6 strategies, but maybe just adopt one, try it for, 2 weeks, and then maybe, slowly add in another strategy. But I want to give you all of them up front because maybe some of these are things that you've already done or are familiar with. So, okay. Number one, use timers. I know I'm going to start with like the most annoying one, the most basic one. But so we are time blind. I probably should have said this already. Let me see. Okay. So we are time blind because of our executive functions. So it is harder to get our brain on board to do things that we're dreading if we cannot place a container of time around it. So when we use timers, it can create a container of time. So it works in two ways. So because we have a hard time, wrapping our head around like the minutes and hours, when we're dreading doing something, we usually envision it taking a lot longer than it actually does. And so setting a timer can put a container around it. So we can tell ourselves, I only have to do this for 10 minutes, right? I only have to do this for 10 minutes. And then it can also, on the flip side, if it's something we really enjoy, it can help pull us out of hyper focus and signal when it's time to transition. Because time works for and against us, right? Like when we're really enjoying something, it can be hard to stop. Transitions are very hard for us, but we have other things that we have to get to in the day, right? We have other things that we need to accomplish. We have other people counting on us. And so using a timer can be really helpful to signal to us that it's time to transition, or to signal to us that it's, how much time has passed. So it externalizes time so that we're not keeping it up here. Like it takes this out of our head and externalizes it so that we don't have to think about it. The other one, this is just like a little side note, but like wearing a watch. This sounds so simple, but it made such a ridiculous difference. My parents gifted me a watch for my 25th birthday, and I haven't taken it off since. and I like to joke that's like, and I haven't been late to anything since, but that's not true. I've been late. I'm late all the time. But it has helped such an insane amount, to the point where I was like, why did it take me 25 years to get a watch? So it's just, it makes that passage of time more visible. And the other thing that helps is a analog watch, they say, is better than a digital watch, because you can see the hand moving. It signals to your brain subconsciously, okay, time is moving, time is passing. So that the benefit of using something like this does the same thing. It shows us that time is moving. I'm actually considering getting a bigger one of these. This is like the most common size. This is like their go-to one. This is like 2 by 3 inches or 4 by 4, something like that. But they also have a bigger one. It's like 8 inches square. I'm thinking about getting that one just to make it even more visible, because sometimes this is like, hidden behind my computer or something. But so just wanted you to know that this little ditty can really help to put a container around time. Okay, that brings me to my next point. So this is the one that I was saying, that I was hinting at, where it's like, okay, I know this is a thing, and I know that this is helpful, but I have not yet mastered this. And that is using the Pomodoro technique. I am being fully transparent. I am getting more on board with the why behind this, and I am going to be implementing this more because I do see the benefits of it, but I just wanted to be fully transparent that this is not a regular practice yet. But so, okay, the Pomodoro technique, let me explain why that is effective for ADHD brains. It helps our brain set small, achievable goals. So if you haven't heard of the Pomodoro technique, it's like a time management strategy where you set a timer. Usually it's 25 minutes on, and then you give yourself a 5-minute break, but you don't have to do it that way. So for me, I do better with longer stretches of time, especially if I'm doing deep focus work. So you could do 25, you could also do 45 minutes on and a 10-minute break. You could do 90 minutes on and a 30-minute break. What's important though is that you have these regular intervals of work time and then an intentional break. And let me explain why that is. So when we are telling ourselves, okay, I have 25 minutes, you're not tempted to say, I'm going to write an entire podcast, or I'm going to write an entire chapter of my book. You know, even for the most time blind ADHDers, we know that that's not possible. Like if we have a, 50 slide deck that we have to do for work, we know that we're not going to do that in 25 minutes. And so it helps us to create a more realistic goal to achieve in that 25-minute block. Like I'm pretty aware of how long it takes me to write a post for social media, for example. So if if I'm like really clear-headed, I can write a script in 30 minutes, and then I can record it in 10 minutes. So I know that generally, like in an hour, I can write and record a script. Like, and this is from, experimenting with this and timing myself over and over and over again. But I know, like, okay, this is what I can accomplish in a Pomodoro. So it's much different. This helps with overwhelm, because it's much different than saying, okay, I'm gonna work until lunchtime. Now go. It's 8 a.m. Go until noon, right? Like that creates that dread, that anxiety, that I don't know where to start, thought process. It can help with the friction. So setting a Pomodoro timer, 25 minutes, 45 minutes, can help with the friction of getting started, because you can say, okay, I'm going to do this task for 25 minutes. And then, if you work from home, you can say like, and then I'm going to go change the laundry during my break, right? During my 5-minute break, I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes so that I don't go over on the time, right? But it's creating this container so that we can better decide what we're going to do with that 25-minute chunk. Okay, rather than saying like, I'll start when I'm ready, or let me just check my email real quick, or let me just scroll on Instagram real quick. It's like, no, okay, it's time to work. This is the time that I decided I wanted to start working. I'm going to set my 25-minute timer. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll set the timer. Sometimes it'll be like 15 minutes or whatever, and I'll just use that time to warm up. But I'm intentionally warming up. I'm intentionally, if I want to scroll on social media, fine. But it's like, that's part of my intentional time. And there's also like the timer is going to go off when it's time to stop, when it's time to transition to something else. I will usually spend that time first thing in the morning to write out my to-do list. I'll start like a fresh page each day, and I'll use that time as like my planning time. But rather than saying like, I'll just start when I'm ready. So it ensures that we are setting a defined time to work, and then that we're taking breaks. So that break part is the part that I struggle with, to be completely honest, because I fall prey to hyper focus. It's like when I'm in the zone, I want to just keep working. But what ends up happening is that mental fatigue will kick in. And that is when, I will start to get distracted. And so I'm recognizing that I do need to be better about taking those intentional breaks. I used to be really good at it. I used to, go for a walk for 5 minutes or whatever. And I'm going to bring that back, because it does make a difference. So not that I'm scrolling for 5 minutes during my break, but I'm like going outside, or I'm going to get a seltzer, or, like I'm doing something that is taking my mind off of working. And so that is the piece that I myself am going to be working on. So we're going to keep ourselves accountable here. So it allows ourselves to check in and then reflect on, how can I support myself for the next block? So let's say you get to the end of one Pomodoro and you're like, I didn't really get to, what I wanted to get to. How can I reframe the next work block, right? It creates that built-in check-in point, because self-awareness is not our strong suit. It helps us to develop that self-awareness of, okay, here's what I got done in the first block. Or it also allows us to celebrate. It's like, woohoo, we had a great block. Like, let's keep that momentum going into the next one, right? Because there are things that we do right. Lots of things. So it allows us to check in. Okay, so we have use timers, practice Pomodoro technique. Any questions? Actually, let me check in to the chat. Juliana said, I'm listening to Shoshana's podcast and her coach mentioned the 2-minute rule. Like, I also always have messages I have to answer and read those 3 to 4 times until I actually do answer those. If I know it's only 2 minutes, just do it. Yes. Oh man, that is such a big one, especially with email, right? The message, we never think it's going to be good enough, or we think that we don't have time, and so we procrastinate it. But the message that we write 3 days later is exactly the same as the one we would have written the first time around. So you're right. It's like we tell ourselves, it's like, just do it now, right? You have 2 minutes for this. You already read the message. It already took a few seconds. It took you out of another task. You're gonna just spin on it for those 2 days, and you'll either forget or you'll just create more work for yourself later. So it's such a good reminder. So John said, this kind of struck me just now as exerting control over time, or it helps me to control time. What do you mean, John? Meaning like these strategies help you to exert control over time, like rather than time controlling you? I'll let him answer. But any questions so far about like the timers or the Pomodoro? Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Cool. All right, so moving on. Step 3 of 6. Well, strategy 3 of 6. This is one that I think has made the biggest difference in my ability to get started on task initiation. Oh, hang on. So John said, Pomodoro, any hints on getting back on task after taking a break? Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from with this, because it's like I have this fear that if I stop what I'm doing, I'm not going to want to come back to it. So for that reason, that's why I said, like, depending on the task, like if it's something that I dread that I don't really like doing, like answering emails, for example, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off is good, because it's like I should get to my emails. I should finish it in 25 minutes. And then that 5-minute break will allow me to transition to a different task. So for shorter tasks, especially ones that I don't like doing, the 25-5 is like a good container. But for tasks that I enjoy doing, for tasks that require deep focus work, I do need longer stretches of time, because I don't want to lose that momentum, which is why I have fallen off of, like taking breaks throughout the day. When I'm focused, like I want to stay there. But I have noticed that mental fatigue will creep in. But so here's what I have done that has worked for me in the past is during the break, what doesn't work for me is doing another task that requires thinking or scrolling, like the screens. Because typically, like the work that I'm doing is on a screen. And so to go from one screen to another screen is not actually giving myself the mental break, and it's not building up my energy reserves. So literally, it's like my options are so limited. I can either go for a walk, I can walk around my house, it's like sometimes I'll just like pace around, or like do something mindless, like I'll pick up, right? Like I'll pick up, like toys on the floor, I'll put blankets away, just something mindless. I'll wash dishes. Going for a walk is probably my favorite thing, or going for a bike ride, but it needs to be something that is either mindless or outside, but that is actually restorative, and not going from like working to reading a book. The other thing is sometimes I will look for like inspiration off of social media. So for me, that would be like podcasts. So reading would require, I think, like more energy, like more of like my eyes on something. But listening to a podcast, like if I'm working on like ADHD content, listening to a podcast about ADHD can be helpful. That's like the where I'm at right now. Does that help to answer your question? The thing that works too, John, for me is having a transition ritual. So for me, it's like if I'm going on that walk, I am mentally like hyping myself up for my next task, or I'm using that time to assess the progress that I've made in the last 90 minutes. And it's almost like I'm giving myself like a locker room pep talk, honestly, like it's like being it's like playing a sport and it's like they have halftime or whatever. I'm like really the worst at like sports analogies in general. Just anyway, all the isms. But like, you have halftime and like you go into the locker room and your coach is like, you freaking crushed it. You guys are great. Go on out there. It's like I kind of use that transition time, that walk, especially to like hype myself up, but giving my brain like the much needed break that it needs, like that to restore my energy reserves. And this is where I think it gets like a little tricky for creatives, honestly. Like that's why I marketed this as a workshop for creatives and entrepreneurs, because I fully understand the dilemma of not wanting to lose your momentum. I get it. Like that is so hard for me. Like when I'm on a roll, I want to keep going. But then what happens when I don't end up taking a break is it's like it's like it creates this fatigue. And I've noticed that at the end of the day, I have an even harder time stopping. And then I'm like irritated. I'm irritable with the kids. I'm like short with them, or I'm still thinking about work when I'm with them, which is not what I want to be doing. Like I want to have a very clear delineation between what I'm working on and then when I'm present with my family. That is what I want for myself. And so I also look at it as a way of like building that tolerance of being able to switch gears. So I get it. It's almost like the longer that you're hyper focusing on something, I've noticed, the harder it is to stop. And so that's this is even becoming more and more clear to me why I do need to build up that break, and also to have a very clear definition of what task I am working on and when I am done with it. Because otherwise, like, it's never done. And then I'm spending 30 minutes, rewriting the same paragraph, right? So it's also creating this like check-in for me. Laura said, I hate stopping because I'll lose my thought process about what I was working on and then I end up starting over. Okay, Laura, great question. So I actually talked about this in my stories the other day, where it was an analogy for life and for time management. I was working on this stool. I had this like really like a stool for the kids, like so they could, climb up on things. It was really gross. It was like covered in paint and food and whatever. So I wanted to sand it down and wax it. But I was also like supposed to be getting ready for a party. Supposed to be getting me and the kids ready. And I was running late, but I was like, you know what? I like really, the mood just struck and I wanted to do this, but I knew that I only had like 20 minutes. So what I did was I sanded it all down and then I needed to wax it. Like I was putting a clear wax on it, but I wanted to remember where I left off because it's a clear wax. So I couldn't really tell. And so I put a piece of tape on all of the sides. And then as I would wax it, I would take off the piece of tape. So now I know which sides are done and which sides are not, because the sides that are not done have a piece of tape on it. And so the reason that I'm bringing this up is because it's an analogy for how we can approach anything in life. So how can you put a piece of tape on the thing that you're still working on, for example? And I'm going to talk about this. When we are externalizing our to-do list, we are crossing things off. And I know, Laura, you're an artist, so this, this might not apply, but you can create like a little bookmark for yourself before you stop, right? So let's say you have an hour. You have an hour to devote to this project. Let's say a piece that you're working on. And you set a timer for 55 minutes. And the last 5 minutes, you can do like a brain dump where you're just writing, as much as you can, what your thought process is. So it's almost like you're creating a bookmark for yourself rather than keeping it up here. You are externalizing it, because you know what? If you keep it up here, you probably won't remember where you were. You probably won't remember where you left off. And so that's why it's so important to create this bookmark for ourselves. And that can be built in to our time. So it's like, if we know we have an hour, create that 5-minute buffer of time where, okay, this is actually my transition time. This is my time to dump everything that I'm thinking about right now, so that when I come back, literally I leave everything out the way it was, all the paints, all of the the canvas or whatever it is that you're working on, and then I leave my little note right next to it of what I was thinking and what I was feeling, and then I can come back to it. This is what I do all the time with my computer, right? Everything I do is digital. I will leave all of my tabs open. I will leave, my to-do list there. I will also close any tabs that I don't need. I'm very religious about closing tabs because they're extremely distracting. So that when I open my computer back up, I know exactly what tabs I was using, what I was supposed to be working on. But it's creating this awareness for ourselves, this intentional awareness, and building that self-trust to know that, okay, I am preparing for tomorrow me or next week me. I'm leaving her little breadcrumbs so that she can pick up where she left off without feeling overwhelmed. How does that sound, Laura? Okay. Hang on, I want to get back to, okay. John said, so ADHD podcast, when you're working on creating content on ADHD, is there a way to get into a mindless space? Do you mean, John, like when I'm listening to ADHD podcasts, am I using it to get to a mindless space?
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's more of when I want inspiration. So when I want to do something mindless, it's going for a walk and listening to binaural beats. There's the Brainwave app, which is, I think it's like $60 a year. And then, but that's a really good one. And then there's one that's only $5, a one-time fee, $5. It's called, hang on. Actually, I think I'm mixing up the two. I can drop it in school too. Okay. So Brainwave is the one that's $5, one-time fee, Brainwave. It's binaural beats, and it's actually, there are studies, like hard science shows that binaural beats can help to stimulate the left and right hemispheres, which allows for more creativity, it helps to like recharge the brain, helps you to get into like a flow state. And then Brain.fm is the one that's more expensive. It's also more robust. I think that one is $60 a year. But it's more like, it's like the Spotify of like binaural beats, like brainwave, like background music.
Yeah.
And I really, really need to like just completely check out, I will do that. I will go for a walk and listen to binaural beats, or like I said, like pick up around the house, because to me that is mindless.
Right.
So something where I should be meditating is really what I should be doing. About that, because then you're like really shutting off and not thinking about anything else. But again, I think walking can be very meditative, especially if you're
I've
not
been walking this whole time.
Oh, I love it. I love it, love it, love it.
Yeah, I'm like taking notes, and I'm on a treadmill right now. But yeah, so the binaural beats, I found that actually it's also on Calm. So if anybody has the Calm app, I just want to throw that out there.
Is that one
Yeah. Yeah, Calm is paid. You get like a 7-day free trial, and then I think it's fairly expensive. It's like $80 a year or something like that.
Oh, okay. So it's about the same as but Calm also includes meditations, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll post these in school. I've also used the Waking Up app. I freaking love Sam Harris. John, have you ever heard of him? Sam Harris? I love him.
Oh,
So
I love Sam Harris.
his
Amazing.
he's incredible. And he has a meditation app. And he does a daily meditation, and it's only 10 minutes. So very doable. That app is also a little pricey. I think it's like $130 a year. But so worth it. He also has a lot of like, it's the daily meditations that you get, and then there's courses in it. So he has a course that teaches you how to meditate, and he teaches you what mindfulness meditation is. And then he's also got like guest lectures in there. It's a really, really just very user-friendly, very stunning, beautiful app. I'll post that one as well. But yeah, these are all ways to kind of like recharge when you really need it to be like mindless. And again, I think like the pep talk aspect for me is so key, because I'm working on my thoughts around what I have to do for the rest of the day. Okay, let's see. John said, totally agree. Nothing I work on is ever done. God, am I jealous of musicians? I would imagine that they would feel the exact same way. I'm sure that musicians feel like, you know, that song is never, you know, perfect, or I feel like musicians are included in the tortured artist category.
So totally, but think about it. Like, no musician is like, man, I've been writing this album for a year and a half, and maybe one day someone will be able to listen to it. Like, no, a musician can just be like, I'll write a song and I'll play it, even if it's not perfect, you know, at least people can hear it.
Do you think that for them, it's more about the process? Going back to what you said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, playing guitar is fun, right?
Yeah.
It's totally fun getting out in front of people. If I showed up at a bar this weekend and was like, cool, I'm going to read you guys my manuscript. All right, everybody just sit down. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Go keep drinking your beer. Alex Lanyon was feeling like an idiot. You know, like nobody would do that.
Yeah, but John, but people read books. But I think what you're saying is like, yeah, you can perform a 3 to 5 minute song. You can't really perform.
Yeah.
True.
I'm not saying they're not artists. They're amazing. I'm just saying I'm jealous.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. But that's interesting. I wonder if there's some thoughts around that where it's like, I wish that there was something that I could produce that was 3 to 5 minutes long. I don't know. I wonder if you could play around with that a little bit of how can you, yeah, I don't know. Because it's like something that's concrete, right? I think the appeal is that you have something to show for it. People do listen to, you know, like what is it? Like readings, like my gosh, why am I'm like struggling right now?
Audiobooks?
Well, no, not audiobooks, but it's like when, let's say like a writer is on tour promoting a book, don't they read from the book?
Sure.
A chapter?
Yeah, I mean, and not to totally hijack this entire process, but you know, I thought about doing stuff like that. I thought about like maybe like releasing my book as a podcast, like releasing my my book even in a blog form. The issue then is copyright, right? Anyone can just listen to it and take it, and and you know, you're not actually publishing the book, and it's not a copyrighted piece in the same way. And you're not actually making any money or doing anything with the book. So you know, where musicians, even if it is only a few songs nowadays, you can put that up on Apple Music, and you can, now they don't make a lot of money, but they can go ahead and start monetizing and building a brand immediately. So like I said, I could totally talk about this for a long time. It's part of being a writer. It is what it is. Yeah, that's just what pops into my mind when I think about that.
I would love to come back to this after the strategies, because I find this really interesting. And even just like, I think that this is very relatable to creatives. And there's a lot of us in here where it feels like, what's the point? And where there's no concrete deliverable. Yeah, let's bookmark this, because I want to finish up the task that I'm so glad that you brought that up. I love that. Okay, so Amy said, I'm having an aha moment here. I've been trying to fit in my business building in between the full-time job and the parenting and the lifing, and all the transitions back and forth between roles and tasks and facets of my life and responsibilities. It's an energy suck. No wonder I feel tapped out so much. Oh my gosh, this is a huge aha moment. I love this, Amy. I wonder if a transition routine will help me stabilize my energy reserves, like eating every couple of hours, stabilize blood sugars. And you got a health coach analogy out of it, Amy. I love that so much. Oh man, I love that. I'm going to use that. I love it so much. It's like balancing your blood sugar. That's exactly right. We really, really struggle with transitions. And so, yes, I think developing this transition ritual can help us to shift gears. And yeah, maybe we're just asking too much out of one day. That's also a big piece of this too. John said it's almost like parenting myself in the future. Yeah. Do we need to start a Zen ADHD subgroup? I love that idea. I could certainly use more accountability because I know the benefits of meditation. It's just, I know that I have some drama around that, right? It's like the time thoughts of I don't have time for this. Okay. John, watch a documentary about Ed Sheeran. You might change your mind about them. Oh, I want to watch that. Okay, cool. So I want to get back to I love this tangent. I want to get back to the 6 strategies, okay? And then I want to open the floor for some coaching. Zen, not Ed Sheeran. Oh. Okay. So number 3. This is a really, really big one. Divide tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. So this really helps us to navigate potential overwhelm. So a neurotypical person might not need to break down all the tasks. They may just be able to do that in their head. But as someone with ADHD, when we can accept that our brain works differently, we can put the supports in place and we can start to recognize like, okay, my brain actually needs more of an external process. It can't just live up here. So we do have to write out the steps in order to make them more tangible. So I do this manually. Again, it's part of my like pre-work ritual, my work warm-up. But there's also a website that you can try if you're into AI. It's called Magic To Do. And you put in a task and it breaks it down into smaller tasks. And so it doesn't, know you specifically, but I did try it a couple of times and I was pretty surprised at what it spit back out. So I did something like, I have to organize my kids' playroom. I put in their ages. I put in like how I wanted it to look. And then it broke down all of the tasks for me. I thought it was pretty cool. So just something to check out. It's called Magic To Do. But so the reason that this is helpful is it's very different to say, I have to clean the whole house versus I need to put the toys on the shelf. Toys on the shelf, doable. Clean the whole house, overwhelming. Or let's say you hate your job and you need to find a new job because you're miserable. But to say, I need to find a new job is like, what does that even mean? But to say, I need to update my LinkedIn profile, way more doable. That's something that can be measured. One thing that really helps me is before I sit down at my desk, knowing what I'm going to produce. You're always sitting down to produce something. So in John's case, it's like 10 pages or however, like you split up your writing, or like I'm sitting down to produce this section of my book, or I'm sitting down to produce a social media post. I'm sitting down to produce the about section on my website. So only sit down when you're ready to produce something instead of saying, I'm going to work on this. So it helps to put blinders on. It helps our brain to put blinders on so we're not distracted by other things. If we are saying like, I need to find a new job, we could find ourselves reading, articles about, different jobs that we like. It's so easy to get sidetracked when we're just sitting down to work on something or to research something, right? Oh my gosh, I'm do this all the time. I'm just going to sit down to research copywriting skills or marketing, whatever. This, I brought this up on week 1 when we talked. I was thinking about John as I was like writing this outline, Coach John. When we talked about, he's like, the situation was, I want more clients. And what we broke down, so the actions were to make him feel more willing was, I want to reach out to, I think it was like 20 psychiatrists. And I want to write a 1 paragraph for how they can benefit from working with me. Right. And so those were all deliverables. Find 20 psychiatrists, write the blurb, the one paragraph blurb. Yeah, those are the two tasks. I was thinking about that, where it's like, it's not just, I need to find more clients. What? Yuck. Like that, there's no, how do we know when we're done, right? So it's like this very clearly defined the tasks. So it's like, if he's sitting down to find 20 psychiatrists, you know, he can break that up into 10 and 10. He can, you know, if he's writing the blurb, he can set a Pomodoro timer for 25 minutes so that it doesn't take 4 hours, right? So it's creating clear objectives, and it's also creating clear milestones to celebrate our accomplishments along the way. So it's creating those opportunities for celebration, like, hey, I got to my 20 psychiatrists, I'm done, right? I can move on. And it helps to give us that momentum to keep us going into the next task. And it can also help for those perfectionists that most of us are, where it's like, okay, if we look at it in incremental steps, it's like, we know that the finished product that we want is this like A+, let's say like resume. But if we can break that down into a process, it's like, okay, my first deliverable is like a resume that would get me hired at my local McDonald's. Like, that's all I'm shooting for, is just like a resume, like as basic as it could get, right? Like, that's deliverable number 1. And then deliverable number 2 can be a B+ resume. And then our next working session can be, all right, I'm gonna, you know, play around with the formatting. I'm gonna make this an A resume. But it's like, you're breaking up the process, as opposed to having this like really overwhelming task of like writing a resume from scratch. It's like, you know, you can tell, you absolutely, any of us could, you know, write a resume in 30 minutes to get us hired at McDonald's, right? Not like, nothing against McDonald's. It's just it's just like, that's something that, like, you know, we all know that we could have the skills for and get down on paper. Okay, so number 4, establish daily routine. Everything against McDonald's. I'm trying to be politically correct. You know what I mean. Okay, so establish daily routines. So when this is something I'm going to call some of you guys out. When you are creating daily routines, it needs to be something that you genuinely want to do and that would actually be helpful to you. Because if you're using all of your energy by 10 a.m., you're not going to have much left to do stuff the rest of the day. So perfect example is this phenomenon of, you know, being a 5 a.m. worker outer. But if you are not naturally a 5 a.m. worker outer person, that's going to be torture. That is not going to be a routine that you're going to want to stick with. So it needs to be something that feels good to you, that is enjoyable for you, not something that you feel like you should be doing. Like, it should, you know, I've talked about this with some of my clients before, where it's like, you're not eating the frog. You should never start with the frog. Always start with the cake, right? Start your day with something that you enjoy and develop that predictability. So, and then come at it from a place of genuine curiosity. If the morning is the only time that you really can work out, you have little kids, you have a busy afternoon, you have lots of, you know, like, if that's the only time, what would make that doable for you? Ask yourself that question instead. Instead of saying like, I should be doing X, Y, and Z, it's asking yourself, what would make this doable for me? Do I need to scale down the workout? Do I need to bring in a friend? Do I need to have my clothes lined up and my podcast picked out and my you know, my sneakers by the door? Like, what would help support me in this routine? And so the why behind this is because it creates more predictability in our days. So that doesn't mean that we won't rebel against it, because we have ADHD, we rebel against everything. But we generally rebel more when the routine is something that we don't actually want to do. Or it might be too rigid. Like, if you are like over scheduling yourself, you know, like to the minute, It's like, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes and then I'm going to, work out for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to, like, if it's like too rigid, it doesn't account for the unpredictability of the day. So when we show up imperfectly being the key word here, you're creating deeper and deeper neural connections, which makes it easier to stick with the routine. So the more we practice doing something, it actually becomes easier to follow through on our routine. So keeping that in mind can help too. A book that I really like, that I'm sure you've heard of before, is the what's that habits book? Totally blanking on it. Somebody knows.
Atomic Habits.
Yeah, Atomic Habits, exactly. He talks about making habits, removing the friction, making it enjoyable. He has like this whole framework for how to instill habits. I love that. Yeah, I love that book. If you don't want to listen, read the whole book, you can, just look him up on a podcast or a YouTube video or whatever, and you'll get the gist, I promise. But it's a really, really helpful framework for adopting new habits. And one of his key messages is like, don't overhaul your entire life. That never works. It's like you're adding tiny habits to something that you're already doing, adding habits to existing habits. John said, I'm reading that right now. And while you were talking about habits, I said Atomic Habits. Yeah, habit stacking. Yes, he talks about habit stacking. So perfect example of this is like, you need to, I don't know, feed your caterpillar, right? I have a pet caterpillar now. It's a thing. And you brush your teeth every morning. So you can add a habit, a desired habit, to an existing habit. I'm going to brush my teeth and then I'm going to feed my caterpillar, every day. It's probably a weird example, but you get what I'm saying. But it's you're creating ease within your existing habits. Awesome. Amy said, this is the exact scenario I paint for my clients. Oh, John, perfect. I put my meds next to my coffee. It helps me remember to take my meds. That is a beautiful, beautiful example. I love that. Another one too, which is kind of, on another note, it's like talking about organization, but this is something that helps me, is I always put things in the same place. Like I have a habit of whenever I get home, I put my purse down in the exact same place. That way I'm not scrambling to look for it before I need to lose the house. It's always exactly where I need it to be. It was my neurotypical wife's idea. That's genius. Oh, thank God for neurotypical spouses. Although I feel like I'm usually coming up with stuff like that. Anyway, okay. So establishing daily routines, just to recap, you are going to be following through on routines that you actually enjoy, A. B, you will create a deeper neural connection the more you practice it. So please go easy on yourself. Expect you to show up imperfectly. Expect that you're going to do it 3 days in a row and then not do it for 4 days. And then pick it right back up, without like the guilt and the shame and the judgment. But it's like, all right, let me try this again, and every time you're doing it, it's like you're walking down a road and you are making that path more and more clear. Doesn't matter if you do, if you walk down the other road 20 times, if you're continuing to try to walk down this new road, it will help. It will make it deeper, it will make it that much deeper, is what I'm getting at. Okay. Oh, and the other thing is you can focus on other stuff because you'll have more gas in the tank. Like if you're not expending all of your executive functions trying to stick with a routine, when it becomes, more of a habit, then you have more energy for the other stuff. You have more gas in the tank. All right, so number 5 is visual cues. So very simple, but easily overused strategy is to use visual cues. So bright colors, post-it notes. When I was a teacher, we would use like anchor charts. And they are just, it's externalizing information. And so on my laptop right now, I have 2 post-it notes taped. So they're not moved. One of them are the 6 executive functions that I talk about the most. So it's like when I'm on client calls, I can easily refer to them. And then the other one are my non-negotiables for the week. And they are like these bright, neon yellow Post-it notes. It helps to externalize what it is that I'm supposed to be working on. You could also put like a Post-it note of a routine that you are supposed to be, that you want to incorporate. The point is, it helps us to absorb the information better. It helps to externalize things so that it's not living up here. But we have to keep in mind to like not overdo it. It's, it reminds me of when I was in college and I would highlight things in different colors, but then I would highlight like 98% of the book, which like doesn't actually help, right? So it's about getting, highlighting just the essentials, which is, a topic for another day, but visual cues are the same way. Like you can overdo it with the visual cues, which is why it's important to just figure out like, what am I working on for this container of time? Like for this, I keep thinking semester, this quarter, right? Thinking of or for this month, right? And you can rewrite a new Post-it note for every month, just so you're like refreshing it. Okay. And then my last tip is planners and calendars. So we tend to have some drama around planners and calendars. If you have a system that is working for you, amazing. Stick with it. Just whatever system you're already using is the best one. Sometimes we tend to think like, oh, there's got to be like a better system out there. There's not. Sometimes it's like a way for us to distract ourselves. Like, I'll be more organized if I, color code everything, or if I have calendars for everything, or no. My biggest piece of advice is to pick one scheduling tool. So one scheduling tool. I prefer digital, but some people like, the physical, copy and they're interacting with a planner or a calendar. But the point is, you should not have some appointments in your paper planner and then some things in your Google Calendar and then some things in your notes. That should be like the first thing, if nothing else, like if that's not an established thing, that would be the thing that I would recommend tackling first, is getting in the habit of using one planning system. Where are we on calendars? Because I can shut up about this if you guys are like, no, I'm good on the calendar front. Are you guys using an organization tool like a calendar or a planner, or is that something that you are struggling with? John said, I bought an Apple Watch specifically to give my calendar a way to remind me that wasn't a phone notification. Oh, I love that. John said, I just started to bullet journal again. Good luck to you. No, I'm just kidding. Some people love bullet journaling because it allows for more like creativity, but I found it tough to keep up with, because it's like every month you have to like set it all up yourself. And anyway, some people really, really love it. I need more of like the structure, and I need the reminders on my phone. I set, whenever I have an appointment, I set a reminder. It's kind of insane. It's like 1 hour before, 12 hours before, 2 days before. I like need to have like the constant reminders that something is like coming, so that I know. Bullet journaling seems like one more thing not something to make life easier. That's kind of, yeah. I mean, again, some people really love it, but to me, it seemed like more work to set up. That's also how I felt about that. There's like a money app. There's a couple, money apps. There's one called YNAB that people love, but it's like so like you have to be so meticulous about setting everything up. I prefer Rocket Money. It's like it automatically categorizes your spending for you. But that to me, it's like bullet journal versus something that's like already set up for you.
I'm sorry, I just feel so validated right now.
I hated YNAB.
I tried that and it was just like, it's so easy. Now all you have to do is go in and track and manually everything that you do every day. And I was just like, do you know who you're talking to here? Come on.
I'm always so floored when I hear of ADHDers using a wine app. I'm like, for real? Good for you, dude. Oh my gosh. No, it's amazing. So, and again, you know, ADHD is a spectrum. Executive functions are a spectrum. Some people, you know, they like that problem solving aspect of like more you know, nebulous kind of tools. Anyway, so Amy said struggling. So digital planning tools are enabling my digital addiction. That's a tricky, that is a tricky one. So digital planning tools are enabling my digital addiction slash scrolling struggle, which I totally understand, because if you're using your phone to manage your calendar, the temptation to hop on Instagram or TikTok real quick is there. And so you have two options. You can either abort the digitalness, but then you're also letting go of like the convenience, the syncing across devices, or you can start to create some awareness about that, meaning in the shape of like maybe like a 5-second pause, right? A 5-second pause where you're like, I'm going into my phone to schedule this meeting, or I'm going into my phone to check, you know, my schedule for the week. And I get it. Like it's certainly not easy to use, you know, a device that is so prone to addiction. I generally I see it as like the pros outweighing the cons. And again, like, you know, it's important to look at like, are we giving ourselves enough time in the day to recharge? Are we using social media as a way of avoiding something else? Like for me, it's like, you know, it's very clear when I get sucked in is when I'm trying to avoid something else. But yeah, we can unpack that a little bit more. Abby said, I recently learned how to use a calendar that works for me instead of thinking I should fill the entire calendar like others. Yeah. Let's see. John said, when I was done with the bullet journal. Oh, I was done with bullet journal until it was explained to me that it's time to create intentionality in our lives. I love that. I love that. Okay. Oh, Amy, yes. Yeah, that's a big one too, is your clients can't book time on your paper calendar. Yeah. So John says, I use my Google Calendar to deal with client booking, but my bullet journal to do everything else. And John said, I'm trying to put everyone on my Google Calendar, even my Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons with my dad group. Oh, hell yeah. Everything. I mean, I felt so bad the other day. I forgot to, this is classic, you know, it happens, ADHD. I was texting, you know, some girlfriends and we set up a dinner date and I forgot to put in my calendar. And then I forgot about it. And it was like the day of, and my friend was like, and I really, it had been such a long time since I've done something like that, but I sat with it and I was like, you know what? I'm allowed to make mistakes. But my friend texted me, was like, what time am I picking you up? And I hadn't told Ryan, I hadn't like said any, like I think I had even scheduled like a client call at that time. And anyway, it was, I just let it go. Like I let it go. I was like, you know what? It happens. And I forgot to put it in my calendar. And, you know, and I'm going to learn from this. Like I didn't use it as like a way to shame myself. It was just like, yeah, like this is why I use a calendar. And next time it's like creating that intentionality, that habit of like, every time an event comes up, I immediately put it in my calendar. And 99 times out of 100, I am very good about that. I used to also be in the habit of like saying yes to things without checking my calendar and then double booking myself. Like these are all, you know, relatable things, but it's like every time you're practicing it, no matter how imperfectly, you're forming those new neural connections. So John said, it doesn't guarantee I will do the test, but it helps me to have a better chance that I will remember to do something. Exactly. If I assume I'm going to remember a haircut or something without the calendar, I'm fooling myself. That is exactly the point. That is exactly the point, which brings me to my last point about ADHD math. So with ADHD math, we ignore the fact that there's only 24 hours in the day and that we need to sleep 7 to 8 of them. We also need to eat, bathe, care for our children, exercise. So as much as we want to believe that we can bend time, we cannot. And so even scheduling things like blocking off a commute, right? If we have to leave the house at let's say you have to be somewhere, at 1 o'clock, but there's traffic, there's the kids putting on shoes, there's us putting on shoes, there's packing lunches, there's the thing that we forgot inside the house. Like, these are all things that we don't account for with ADHD math. This is all so relatable to so many of you, I'm sure. So it's like we judge time based on the best case scenario. But so developing that it's like that one time that we got to, our kids' school in 10 minutes, when normally it takes like 15, right? That one time that our kids actually put their shoes on when we said so, right? And so that's the thing that we need to start accounting for, and just developing some awareness around without shame. But so one thing that really helps is doing the math, is like treating the day like a math problem. And so this is such a pain in the ass exercise, but it's almost like non-negotiable. When you have a to-do list, that you're putting time estimates next to everything. And when you're just getting started with this, it can even be, like as granular as, the time it takes to get out of the house, right? Accounting for the shoes, the grabbing jackets, the grabbing the water bottles, whatever. Adding that into the math, adding that into the time it takes to do something, because that time needs to come from somewhere. If we're doing this, what are we not doing? And so I can't tell you how many times I've planned 9 hours worth of work to get done in 4 hours. This is still something that I actively am working on. So how many of you guys have done that? Like, yeah, I mean, all of us. So this is such a crucial task to develop self-awareness, is, don't do that to yourself. Like, don't set yourself up for failure only to do, only to punish yourself for it later, right? So write down the things that you want to accomplish, and then write down the time estimates, and then write down how much time you actually have left. Okay, I have, from 9 to 3, but during that time, like, I need to eat. I need to, I need to do these 5 things, and then you can start to prioritize. You can start, it's like, okay, I have 10 hours worth of tasks, but I only have 5 hours to do them. Then you can start eliminating, but at least you're doing it consciously. Because if you don't do this, what ends up happening is you start with the easiest task, or you start with the task that doesn't scare you, but that's not actually the most important task. And so you fill up the first 4 hours of the day with these like low level, low risk tasks. And then you get to the last hour, and now you're panicking, the urgency sets in, and you're trying to do like 3 hours worth of work in 1 hour. It's a math problem. So John said, do you think one of the issues we have with this is that we can do tasks faster than neurotypicals, that we could count on this ability? That's a great question. And my question to you is, can we do things faster than neurotypicals? I think it depends. I think if it's some tasks we're just naturally better at. But I think that sometimes we have this problematic positive thinking about tasks, like thinking that we can do certain things faster than we actually can, or and this is why it's also helpful to have a framework to the day and to know what our non-negotiables are, because some days we might, just be like really with it, and we might be feeling more determined. But then other days, we could be operating with less spoons, right? I've talked about spoon theory. Maybe some days you start with 10 spoons. Maybe other days you're only starting with 6 spoons. And so you need to adjust accordingly. I mean, it varies, you know, for women in particular, I have to talk about this because it's so important. Our cycle changes a lot about our capacity. You know, I was just telling my husband, it's like this fog comes over me. And it's so, you know, it can be really frustrating, but it's like, I know that my capacity is lower, you know, depending on where I am in my cycle. So this is important for the men to know too, right? This is in order to support, you know, partners or friends or whatever. But it's a very real thing. So John, spoon theory is this idea that our capacity shifts. So our energy, not just our time, but our energy is finite. And let's say that you're starting with 10 spoons. And I think that is what they say in spoon theory is like you have 10 spoons, right? And the spoons are like what you're giving your energy to. And so one spoon can go towards like your boss. One spoon, like 2 spoons, like depending on how much energy a task takes. Like I'll give you an example from my own life. So let's say I have 10 spoons. Mondays are my client coaching days. I'm literally coaching back to back on Mondays. And so I have to be mindful of my spoons so that I have some left over for my family. If I'm giving, you know, all 10 of my spoons to the tasks that I'm doing that day, I'm going to be a very grumpy person. I could also be borrowing spoons from the next day. And so the next day, it's like I'm starting at a lower capacity. So some tasks might take up more energy than others. There's also this idea of like, if you look up the Solve It grid by Dr. Tamara Rossier, she wrote a book called Your Brain's Not Broken. It's one of my favorite ADHD books. It's very easy to read. It's like it doesn't sound clinical, and it's very conversational. And she's funny too. But so she talks about this idea that there are different categories of tasks, and it's not actually about how long something takes. It's about how much energy it takes from us. So for example, I really enjoy creating my social media posts for the most part. I enjoy doing them. I hate writing emails. So, and like just managing my inbox. I hate it with all my heart. I'm so bad at it. And I should stop telling myself that, but admin stuff, it's like, it pains me. But so that, like, seriously, if I have to catch up on emails, that would take like 5 spoons. Like I hate it so much. But like putting together, you know, 2 social media posts and like scripting something and you know, something that I'm excited to talk about, that takes up like 1 spoon, you know? So it's not about how long something takes. Like doing the email stuff could take me 20 minutes, but it just takes up so much more of my energy. And the social media stuff, it might take me an hour, but it might take up less of my energy, especially because I've been doing it for a while. Does that make more sense? Yeah. It's also, it's cool too to imagine our capacity like a bubble, you know, kind of like Glinda, like the Good Witch, you know, she's like in a bubble, and sometimes our bubble is bigger. We have more energy, more capacity for things. Maybe we're riding high on some momentum, you know, from doing something, or we had a weekend that like really filled our cup. And so our bubble is like this big. And we can, you know, we have the capacity for all the things. But then, you know, someone comes and like pops our bubble or our bubble is like, you know, closing in on us because the demands of the day are getting to us. Like that's also, you know, an idea of like how spoon theory works. And so some days you're starting off with a smaller bubble, you have less capacity, even though you have the same amount of hours in the day. You know, it might take you more time to get through things. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to stop talking now and open the floor up for some conversation. I have some things I can talk about for like unpredictable schedules, but I can always table that for like an actual conversation with somebody. If you're experiencing unpredictability. And I think that it can help it be more tangible, more relatable, when we hear from somebody. So I'm going to end there. And I want to just recap the 6 strategies. So they are using timers, making time more visible, practicing Pomodoro for the reason of transitions, and giving ourselves a much needed break throughout the day. Breaks, multiple, dividing the tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. 4 is establishing routines that we actually want to do. And then using visual cues was 5. And then 6 is planners and calendars, being mindful of ADHD time math. All right, guys. Krista said, I recently stopped taking my birth control and it was a really big adjustment. I wasn't expecting it. Great example, Krista. Yeah, like these, it affects our hormones, right? So that adjustment period, your capacity might be smaller. And so really getting clear on what are our non-negotiables, and sitting down, I know this is annoying, but making it as comfortable as possible, to do some CEO time, to give yourself some planning time, in the beginning of the week or at the end of each day, where you are planning out, like, what are my priorities for the week? What are my priorities for the month? It eliminates the executive function needed to decide in the moment, what do I need to be doing right now? And that's especially, it's so helpful when our capacity is lower. Actually, just remembered something that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So related to planners and timers, have you guys ever heard of day theming? Using day themes? So it is a planning method. I actually talk about it I have this like guide, it's like a $37 guide called Chaos to Clarity. It's all about like the basics of like planning and scheduling, and I get into that. So day theming, time blocking, task batching, it's like all of like the foundations of planning and scheduling. But so anyway, just to give you a real brief synopsis, day theming is when you assign a theme to each day of the week, which can help you create put up blinders. So for example, Mondays are my client coaching days. Day theming has been really helpful for me in my business. So Mondays are my client coaching days. That's all I'm thinking about. I'm like updating my client coaching handbook. I'm in the zone of helping, like my gears are turning in that direction of like being present with my clients and what they're struggling with. And that's it. Like that is all I expect from myself that day, because it takes up a lot of my spoons. Tuesdays are the day that I volunteer at my daughter's school. So I don't think about anything else, like I don't, if I'm posting on social media that day, it's because I already had it like pre-scheduled. So Tuesdays, I'm like committed to, working with them, I'm in the building, that's what I'm focusing on. So Tuesdays are my school days. Wednesdays are like my social media days. So they sometimes alternate between Wednesdays and Thursdays, but generally Wednesday is my social media day. It's when I try to batch my content. Thursdays are my like professional development days. So, or they're the days that I'm like teaching, workshops or things like that. Sometimes Wednesday and Thursday flip flop. But so Thursdays are also the days that I do my professional development. So any courses that I'm in, any, coaching programs, any like training videos that I want to watch, I do that on Thursdays. And then Fridays are for school Fridays. So my kids have off from school, and I go with like a group of my friends into the woods, and we spend the day, so it's Thursdays or Fridays are off. Again, if I'm posting that day, it's because it's like pre-planned, or sometimes I'll post to my stories, but I'm not like working on Fridays. But the reason behind day theming, the way that it is so effective for some people is that it's like it eliminates some of the decision fatigue of knowing like, what am I supposed to be working on that day? I've already decided ahead of time what my non-negotiables are. My family, my Marina school, social media, my clients, and my professional development. That's it. It's like one per day. Those are my non-negotiables, you know, for this quarter. Next quarter, we can reassess. But it's like I have that day theming method has really helped me to get to the things that I consider important, even if I don't get to all of the things, right? Because as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a human, there's always going to be things that come up that seem important. Okay. John said a client coaching handbook sounds amazing. Maybe we can chat about it later. Yeah, it's just been like total side note, but I need like all of my stuff in one location. And so now I've been working on it for like months. Like every time that I listen to a podcast or every time I read a book, I add to this coaching handbook, and it just helps me when I'm in a call. Like, let's say somebody brings up something related to boundaries, I have a section on boundaries. That way I'm not taxing my ADHD brain to remember everything that I've ever learned about boundaries. Like, I can't think on the spot like that. And I accept that about myself. This whole time that I've been teaching this class, like I have notes that I'm going off of. I have so much awe and respect for people that can just ad-lib it. I used to really beat myself up about that. I used to feel a lot of shame about not being able to just ad-lib it. And now I just say, who cares? Like I need the teleprompter when I record my social media stuff. It's changed my life. I need notes when I'm talking to you guys. I need notes when I'm talking to my clients. And you know what? It makes me a better coach because it allows me to be more present, and it allows me to stay, within the constraint, like the constructs of like a time, right? I cannot ad-lib damn thing. All right. Now I'm really going to stop talking. And I would love to coach somebody, if you would like to volunteer, about something, maybe related to time management. Doesn't have to be, but, just while we're on the topic.
You may want to go, or if not, I'll do it. I've been putting it off.
Go for it. Woo-hoo.
So I guess my biggest struggle with time management, besides, my entire life, is writing, which is like the number one thing. Like, we did like the 15 goals, and then comprised it down to 5. That's from your book, I think, right? Chaos to Clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Number one was writing, right? Number one, that was like the most important goal that I wanted to do, was to be a professional writer, not just a copywriter. But and so maintain a consistent writing schedule is a massive struggle for me, and I tend to like put it off and feel insanely guilty that I'm not writing day in, day out, and then I will just binge and finally go in there and do tons and tons of work. I even have like a writing partner that I'm writing the screenplay with in LA, and we'll say, all right, so let's, beginning of the week, this is what we're going to do this week, and we'll meet on Friday and we'll do it. And I will write 20 pages of screenplay in like an hour and a half before we meet. I'll put it off all week long, and then just be like, I've got to do this. And then I will just, so, and that's just been, that's this pattern, and doesn't matter what I do, I can't seem to get out of it.
Okay. So hang on, let me grab my little thing here, because I definitely want to run this through Stu. So what I'm hearing you say is that, what I'm hearing you say is that you want a consistent writing schedule. Yes. So you're a writer, and you want a consistent writing schedule. So why do you want that? Like when you say I want a consistent writing schedule, what does that mean to you?
You know, so part of it is, I guess it's just like anything, you compare yourself to others. And I've heard about people who like, no, I wake up and I look out of my window and I write for 3 hours, and you know, but it seems like many writers who have made who have had amazing careers, they write every day. That's what they do. They have a consistent writing schedule, whether it's, you know, 2 hours or all day long. I mean, like, I'm not Stephen King, right? The guy's a machine. He just like
Yeah.
sits down and writes for 12 hours a day. But I mean, at the very minimum, I want to like do something every day, because there are 3 days will go by and I haven't done anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Sometimes a lot longer than that.
for sure. For sure. I'm sure this is so relatable to so many of us, especially because you are someone who has put yourself in a position to pursue a passion, right? Like you enjoy writing. This is like you have pursued a creative field, but now you're like, well, how do I do the thing that I actually said I wanted to do? Like this is what I want to get paid for. Like this is, you know, my craft that I want to, this is, you know, what I came to this planet to do. But when it comes time to do the actual writing, sometimes days will go by, and then you start to feel the guilt and the shame, and then it's also like the pressure.
Yeah.
This is your full-time job, right? Or you said, so you're a copywriter.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing. It's like my wife will say, "Well, you are a professional writer now. You're a copywriter. You've got a good job as a copywriter." And my instinctive response is, "Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
Mhm.
That doesn't count. I don't care about. I write about insurance."
Mm,
Like, you know, and that's really ungrateful. It's an amazing job. It's the best job I've ever had. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, um, a million people could read some of the email campaigns that I write, and I'm like, who cares? But if somebody read a chapter in my book and like was moved, I mean, you know, 10 people felt like, I don't even know. I can't even explain how that would feel.
okay. Okay. Okay.
And, you know, you said something I enjoy. I enjoy it after. Uh,
Mhm.
Building up to it and getting started is excruciating. Especially since, you know, it's solitary. It's you versus the blank page. It's constant. It's this thing that if I don't do it, no one else can, and no one else can help me.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Is that true that no one else can help you?
yeah, I mean, well, I mean, for writing a novel, yes. I mean, screenplays are different. That's one of the reasons I love the film industry. You know, it's actually a lot of people coming together to create something,
Mm.
which I just think is so amazing.
It's more collaborative,
Correct. Yeah.
but you're working on both a screenplay and a novel. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Well, I'm specifically talking about my second novel right now. My first novel is terrible. You're never going to read it. But my but the one, yeah, the one, it's finished, but I'm re-editing it right now. I cut 20,000 words out of it, and I'm doing like a basically like a anyway. I'm doing another pass through it to make it stronger and improve some things and fix some things. And once that's out, then I have to start the submission process over again.
Yeah. Okay. So that sounds really hard. And I just want to validate you for being vulnerable and for actually getting this far. Like you wrote a novel, dude. Like that's really impressive. But now you're stuck on the editing piece, it sounds like. So do you want to talk about which is more challenging for you? Would you say the novel project or the screenplay project?
Oh man, that's a great question. I find screenplays way easier to write
Okay.
because one of my strengths as a writer is dialogue.
Mm,
I'm a natural dialogue writer. I love it. It's something I feel very blessed when it comes to, you know, being able to do. And screenplays are mostly dialogue. So, you know, getting people into a room. Plus, it's shorter. It's I mean, it's just there's a lot less mental load, at least for me. I can write screenplays much faster.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. You said it's a lot less mental load. So I want to try to pick apart where the mental load comes from with the novel. Is it okay if we stick with the novel?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So walk me through what it looks like, feels like when you are sitting down to, work on your novel. Do you have a time of day when it's supposed to be happening? Like, walk me through that experience.
So I've tried to like set like, all right, this is when I start. I'm gonna do this. I've tried mornings, I've tried nights. The only thing that actually consistently has ever worked is if I go to a coffee shop to write, I can do that. Something about that process. But the hilarious thing is I'll say, all right, so I'm going to take a break from my actual job. I'm going to go to a coffee shop today for lunch and I'm going to write. And I never do it. I never actually leave the house. It's so weird. Like I'm always like, no, I don't have time to do that. I can't do, and I never actually get out the door. I mean, I've done this like dozens of times. It's so strange.
Hang on. So if you can get yourself there, if
Yeah.
you can get yourself to the coffee shop, you know that you will be able to write.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what does that, let's say you're at home. You finished your copywriting job. You blocked off this window of time when you want to be writing. What are you doing instead?
I mean, sometimes I'm still doing work.
Okay.
Right. I'll just continue to do that. Sometimes I will, yeah, like I'll start researching something about the book and then never get actually to it, or that'll take up that time. Sometimes I will get completely sidetracked and like outlining. Sometimes I get I'll think I'll start to get into the creative process and I'll work on a different idea. um I mean, and sometimes I'm so kind of overwhelmed by the whole process. I'll find myself an hour later and I'm playing a computer game. Like I'll just completely check out and do something that isn't productive at all.
For sure. This is so relatable. This is so relatable for so many of us. And it's also this idea of like, this doesn't make any sense. Like I want to be doing this. And so I want to try to pick apart, because usually, there's like this 5-second moment where we are subconsciously making the decision to not choose to work on
Right.
and so I want to try to pick apart what's going on there. So like if you're saying yes to continuing to work, you're saying no to the novel. If you're saying yes to researching the book, which is like a procrastivity task, you're saying no to actually moving the needle in the novel. So I want you to fast forward a little bit. Like, let's say the novel is done. What do you think will happen?
Okay, man, you're really good, because that is absolutely one of the things that I find the process of publication. It's like a Kafka-esque nightmare. Like you have to try to get an agent, and then you have to try to get publication after that, and then you have to try to get sales. And so you go to like 10 agents at a time and you write query letters, and they can take up to 2 months to get back to you. And then the rejection rates are like 95%, and then you go through the process over and over and over again. And then once you get an agent, you're not like my boss at work, actually, my manager, he's a published novelist and hasn't sold anything. Like he's got 4 books published and doesn't make any money off any of it. So like this is what I've always wanted to do ever since I was 14 years old. And here at the end, it seems even more daunting now that I've finished than it does. I guess this gets why, like a musician can go and play in a coffee shop, right? I feel like this book's never going to get anywhere.
If it doesn't get anywhere, like if you know that you're not going to make a single dime from it, like if you knew that, would you still want to do it?
Yeah, but but also there's like a what's the point then? Like what? Because it is so much effort.
Mhm.
It's so much work. And then what's the point of it, right? It'd be like if you're a sculptor and you bury your sculptures after you finish them. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah. Hmm. So what emotion, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. This is really interesting. So like what I'm noticing is I wonder if like part of it is not avoiding even like finishing the novel because you're so close. But I wonder if it's avoiding what comes after. Because if you never finish the novel, then you can never get rejected and you never have to sit in that
Yeah,
torturous loop of, the waiting and and waiting to hear back, and like how does that feel in your body? Like is that ringing true?
yes, because if an agent called me tomorrow and said, "Look, read your first 3 chapters. I think they're amazing. Please send me the rest of the book." And I know I'm in the editing process. I could 100% get it done in a week. I know I could. I could finish editing the entire rest of the book. I would just like buckle down and just get it all done. If there was like something, if there was an actual, um, you know, goal at the end that I could reach.
Meaning like if there was a deadline.
Yeah, yeah. But a deadline that I set, I found I'll be like, all right, this is when I have to do this by, and it'll come and go, and there's no consequence, right?
Oh, for sure. So if it was an external deadline.
Yeah.
So what do you like, is that possible at all? Like to submit a portion to an editor, or did you so
Yeah.
so I don't know a ton about like the literary world, right? But it's like so you have an agent, but then that agent would submit to editors, or like walk me through the process a little bit.
Yeah, so then they try to find a good fit for you. And then you kind of have to, as a team, sell that whole book to the publisher, right? And then the publisher may want some changes. And then so you go through the other process, and then ostensibly at the end of that, it does get published. And then you have to hope it sells, right? And it totally depends on, what marketing goes behind it. And I do have a friend who she is a published author, and she's actually done pretty well. She's a USA Today like a bestseller.
Mm.
So like I've seen that it's possible, right? And she keeps being like, "Hey, when are you gonna get this thing going?" But yeah, like now I have like all this shame because I haven't gotten it done, and I haven't like sent her um anything. I feel, yeah. Anyway,
For
I
sure.
feel like I'm all over the place talking about this too. So.
No, this is John. This is so incredibly relatable, and I'm so glad that you're bringing this up. And that is essentially like what this process of talking it out is meant to do, is kind of like looking at it from all of these different angles. So I just want to validate like exactly what you're doing, and I know that this is so uncomfortable, right? It's
Yeah.
so uncomfortable to talk about this. But so I want to let's try to like externalize this, right? I talked about like how we are externalizing this, or how it's important to externalize things. So the situation is um you're a writer, you want to finish your novel. Okay. And the thought, I've got lots of thoughts here. What's the point? Was one. What were some other ones? It's excruciating getting started, you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, one of them I have to admit is, and especially like in the rewriting process, I've seen this thing so many times now. I vacillate between, is this even good? Like, am like, like, is this even? I mean, all I see are flaws, and then there'll be moments when I'm writing, and I'll be reading through it, and I'll start laughing, and I'm like, this is awesome. This is so good. You know, it's weird. I don't have like these. There's not a lot of middle ground with it. It's either like, what am I doing? Oh my gosh, this is. I'm never going to get anywhere. This is crazy. This is not very good at all. To this is brilliant. I can't wait to show people this.
That's so relatable, right? And it's almost like your book is like your baby. And this might sound kind of weird, but
No, it doesn't at all.
well, well, maybe this part might sound weird, but it's like, I don't know, sometimes your kids piss you off, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we
Like this morning.
yeah. Dude, sometimes they're just really annoying and frustrating and infuriating. But then sometimes we look at them, especially when they're sleeping, and you're like, most perfect thing I've ever seen. Like they're and then you have, these instances where they do things that make you so proud, but then they're also so frustrating. But you would never disown them, right? Like you kind of approach each day as an opportunity to kind of shape them the way that you, right? I'm talking macro, like micro. Yeah, what do they say? The days are long, the years are short. But each day you are working on kind of like molding them to be this person to go out into the world and spread their wings, and hopefully like let them do their thing. I wonder, and you kind of mentioned, this idea of like it being about the process. I wonder if we could just like try this on like a sweatshirt. What if instead we look at it as, and this isn't the last book I'm gonna write, what if we look at it as a process? And this, this idea of like being unattached to the outcome. What if we play around with that? Like, how does that feel in your body of like creating this being, right? Let's call your book like your baby. And what if you are parenting your baby, you're nurturing your baby, you're getting ready, you know that you're not gonna knock it out of the park every single time. You're not gonna knock it out of the park every single session. But what if each day you're getting closer and closer to this baby becoming an adult? And you kind of like take the outcome out of your control, because we can never put the outcome up here. Like we can never predict how it's going to land. We can never predict, how, if it's going to sell, but we can work on this stuff, right? And we can have the result of, the novel getting finished. How does that feel in your body? Like what is that bringing up for you? Is it still more of like, well, what's the point?
No, actually, I mean, the reason I brought that up earlier, about how making the process the thing that you enjoy and not just the goal, right? That's something that I saw recently. I'm constantly looking for like, YouTube videos on like productivity or like, creativity and all, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was something that I saw recently I thought was really powerful. That the people who really succeed in life, like they enjoy the process of doing something, right? And so if you can kind of neurologically make that switch, it's so much easier. This week's been insanely hard for me to institute that. My brother's actually in the hospital, and so it's been a really tough week. And so like I've had much fewer spoons, as you've been saying, to deal with. But the expectations don't lower with the spoon count. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're not like, oh my gosh, this week is just there's too much. I have very few spoons. It's okay if I don't do as much. For some reason, that's not as intuitive as the rest of the process. But long story long, that is where I want to go with this. I really want to try to develop a writing habit and a writing practice that I enjoy, and remind myself that there are all these moments of it that I do really like once I finally get in the flow of it.
Yeah. First of all, I'm so sorry about your brother. I mean, I wish him well. And I do want to acknowledge that, like, yeah, it's not intuitive at all. Like to understand like the connection between like how much capacity I have, how big my bubble is and what I can actually accomplish. But one thing that I do want to, encourage you to sit with is this idea of not being proud of every single thing your book does. Like let's just play around with this for a second. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Do you enjoy being a parent?
Yes. No, I mean, yeah, no, I definitely do. It's not easy, but it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
One of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. Amazing. I wonder if we can translate some of that into our writing process. Becoming a writer is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. Right? I wonder if that's one thought that we can adopt from time to time, but also knowing that just like your kids, your book is going to frustrate you. And just like your kids, you have to feed them, clothe them, every day, the punks need food every day, right? Like every day, no matter how we're feeling, no matter how many spoons we have, we are going to feed our kids. We're going to clothe them. And maybe on the days when we have less spoons, they're having mac and cheese or chicken nuggets for dinner, And on the days where we have more spoons, like, we're like, come here, man. Like, want to help me cook? Oh my gosh, how many spoons do you need if you want to ask your kids to help you cook? Right? It's like the mess and like the executive functions needed, and but like you need to be in the right state of mind for that. Like there's like a spectrum, right? Either way, your kids get fed. Some days it's chicken nuggets. Some days it's like a beautiful, like square meal with like a vegetable and a carb and a protein. They're eating salmon, like there's a spectrum, but either way, the kids get fed. I wonder if we look at the process of writing like that, and we honor our capacity like that, where we're not expecting for every single word to move somebody. Like you mentioned, like what would really be amazing if like somebody could read a chapter in my book and they were moved. But what if they are moved by the book and not each individual chapter? Just like you are so proud of your kid, but not each individual action that they take, right? How does that feel in your body?
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think if I kind of think about it as and books do eventually have an end, I hope and pray. So yeah, but like, of course, I already have 2 other books I want to write after this, and it's not even the sequel to this book, which is going to be a series. Because ADHD. It's not like I'm walking down the street not thinking about a new story. Of course I am. So like, but the writing practice in general, thinking about it more like that is about something you have to nurture. right? And uh, giving it based on where you are at, as opposed to what you think it deserves or needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is a very different thought process, which I like.
Yeah. So in order for, like, in a perfect world, how do you think you would need to feel to show up to the coffee shop? Like, to work on that book? How do you think you would need to feel?
Ah, man, I suppose that I had space to
Mm.
do that, that I wouldn't be that I wasn't being completely irresponsible, based on like work and other things that I could or should be doing.
Yeah.
Um, and that I wasn't, yeah, I always end up telling myself, you don't actually need to do this. You're just wasting time and money, going doing something else, right? You should just, you've got a computer here. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to get this done here, even though of course there is. It's very like I'm much better writing when I'm in that different environment.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. So that thought of like, you're being, I'm being irresponsible, or like I'm asking too much, right? I
Yeah.
should just be able to get this done here. Like, why am I making this such a big thing? But what if we can tap into accepting that this is, this is a tool, like this, accepting that this creates that feeling, this creates that momentum. So here's what I'm seeing happening. So you want to finish your novel, but these thoughts that you're tapping into, what's the point? It's excruciating getting started. I'm being irresponsible. Is this even good? What this is triggering in us are, the emotions that we're so familiar with at this point. It's like shame, um, pressure. And so what we're doing is we are not taking the actions that would help us to complete this book. So it's almost like it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, never mind,
Yeah.
the result of it possibly getting rejected, or never mind, how long it's taking, but it's like we can't even get to the things, to the actual writing or to the editing, because we are stuck here. And so I want to play around with some other thoughts. So
You just said pressure, and something actually popped into my mind.
yeah.
Um, do you remember my first introduction where I said that, I kind of drifted around and made all these decisions thinking I was going to be a writer, and I was like completely unrealistic, and I was like working at like Barnes and Nobles and lived in Manhattan, like, stuff like that. God. Yeah, so it took me a long time to kind of get to a career and all that other stuff. Like I said, I never realized this until now. I feel like this book has to it's got to be worth that. It's got to be good enough and do well enough to make those years and all those decisions that I made not in vain,
Mm.
right? That like if this was like my second career and I already had like, a job and I've been working forever, and there's nothing writing on whether or not this ever happens or not, I would be like, oh well, cool, I'll just go ahead and write it and sit it out there, and it doesn't really matter what it does. I feel like it has to be great, and I have to be successful at this, or else like I've just been wasting a lot of my life.
Wow. Yeah, that is makes a lot of sense why you're not doing, it's creating this sense of pressure, this sense of shame, this sense of overwhelm and urgency, because it's like, yeah, like this better be worth it. This better make up for it, for all the time and all the sacrifice. But what if we looked at our own kids like that? Right? Like, man, you better be worth it. You better go out and do some great things. Like, we would never expect that of our kids. Like, we
Sure.
don't we don't, go into parenting expecting for them to come out. Okay, so there's like, there's certain expectations or whatever, but like at the end of the day, we're not expecting our baby to go off and like, fend for themselves. Like, and I feel like part of, that shame and that pressure is like expecting your book to fulfill all of these promises for you, which is creating this like, this like bottleneck. And sometimes some days you can power through it, but other days it's like those thoughts are so much louder. The thoughts of like, this better be worth it. What is the point of all this? But I'm trying to see if there are some thoughts that we would be willing to tap into where we weren't attached to the outcome. Like so in your mind, if you are, if you are getting to the end of this book, what would make it worth it for you? Like at this point, like what would make it all worth it?
So, and basically the real question is what would make it worth it, not best case scenario, right? Because best case scenario is obvious, right? Get an agent, get it published, becomes a bestseller, you write, you sell the film rights, life is easy, you're coasting. But I mean, honestly, getting this done, people who read it enjoying it, getting an agent, getting it published and out there and having even like modest success, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah. But how will we get to that, without having finished it? It's like this is
Oh
like,
yeah, no, it's obvious. It's right there, staring me in the face. Yeah, every day.
So something that I want you to kind of like sit with is like to surf the emotion. So creating this awareness. So let's say, like it's the end of the day. What time would you go and write? Like generally, like at what time would you feel comfortable ending work?
I mean, I'm super lucky. My job is pretty flexible. So probably the middle of the day sometime. Like we do have a meeting every day at 11:30. So either prior to that or right after that would work.
Okay. That's interesting. I wonder if you could play around with, prior to work, because you had mentioned like sometimes feeling guilty about, like, oh, there's stuff that I should be doing at work, or what if you start the day with writing it so that you're giving your best spoons to your project, like to your novel, and then you also have this container of time where you need to be back for that meeting. But I wonder if ending the writing session on like on a high, as opposed to like, like expecting to have this like wrapped up. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
no, I totally do. And a thought just occurred to me. Another one of my issues that I'm having right now is so I take care of the kids in the morning. My wife, she has to be at work at 8, and as you know, daycares and preschools and all this stuff are just so convenient for us parents. They can't be dropped off until 8:30.
okay.
And we live in the city. We're a 1-car family, so I walk the kids every day, 30 minutes each way. So 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, and I drop them off and then I come back. And so Abby leaves before me too. So I like get them ready, get them fed, pack their lunches and all that stuff and take them back. And so by the time I get here, I'm like, I don't want to work. I'm like stressed out and I've been rushing all morning. And so I've been trying to do like, I put in my calendar, decompress and zazen, right? Meditate. But I find that I don't want to do that either because it's like, that still feels like one more thing. So I'm wondering if maybe going to a coffee shop would seem like a treat. So if I got back and I was like, I'm gonna grab the laptop. Let's go to a coffee shop. I can write. It'll be that, and rephrase that as like me time, like reframe it, right? I get to do that. I'll give myself that. Even if it's just for an hour, like I'll allot an hour, but as long as I'm back for my meeting, no one's really gonna care. That's another great thing about my company is they're on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So nobody's at work until like, 11, 12 my time. So yeah, I could do that. And that at least like I could try a few days a week and see what it felt like in it.
I love that because I think that for you, it's like, I think that it sounds to me like you're comfortable with the process of like for you, it doesn't sound so much like you're afraid of the rejection. Yeah, you've talked about like, this idea of like what's the point, but also you've mentioned like if I can get myself to the coffee shop, I can write. And you're like, and I already have, three more ideas for books. So it's like you're committed to this. Like you're a lifer, like
Yep.
it writing is not going anywhere from your life. And so I wonder, yeah, if it's just like just getting yourself to show up.
Yeah.
And even like I will make one other suggestion is what if you take your laptop with you? So you don't even have to go back home. Like could you take your laptop when you go drop off the kids and then go from the daycare? Could you walk to a coffee shop from there?
100%. I mean, like there's a coffee shop right there.
Yeah.
However, parent to parent, I got a double bob. Like, what am I gonna do with those things? It's like a
Come on,
Cadillac.
John, just park outside.
It's Philadelphia. It won't be there when I get
Oh
back.
shoot. Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right.
I mean, I'm not saying I live in a bad part of town. I don't, but like still, it's
No,
just
that's true. You don't
I
have
would
to.
need to like fold it up and you go in there and you're the guy with the gigantic stroller that's like, it's like I'm dragging like a VW Beetle behind me and stuff. It's
Well, okay, and maybe this won't even be as much of an issue, but it's like I was just thinking like so that you wouldn't have to go back inside and start thinking
I know
else.
that's what, most of that's probably in my head. I bet most people would not care if I was the guy coming in with a stroller. It's just that's probably just one more excuse in my mind. So maybe I should just try that. There's a new coffee shop that's like a block away from their preschool.
Yeah. I would love to hear how that goes because I think that is a lot of where the friction is coming from. And then you're also expecting yourself to pour out this creative side. In other words, like what are your best hours? Is it in the morning?
Um, so yeah, it's either like in the morning or like mid-afternoon. I have this other like
Okay.
burst where I'm able to do stuff. I can only write at night if I like have to, right?
Yeah.
If it's like there's a deadline, then I can like get myself geared up and churn it out again. But typically by then I'm, ADHD, we're all used up by that point.
Right. Yeah. So I love this idea of like playing around with like giving your best time to your project, like giving your spoons to the thing that lights you up will create that momentum, for getting past those thoughts, right? Because it's like you've already, fought so many battles, like during at work you've already put out so many fires like with your kids and with your job, like, and then to expect yourself to like regain some of that in order to work on your novel. Yeah, I wonder if this is more of a friction activity than it is a like, of course there's some emotional regulation there, getting yourself to actually show up to the coffee shop is one thing, but I think I would play around with that of like, treating it more as like a part of your day and treating it as a routine and almost like your me time, like you
Yeah.
said, so that it's not, this thing that needs to prove itself to you.
Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds like it would be much more practical and it would actually work rather than just sitting here and trying to white knuckle it. You know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
doing the same, like being in the same environment that isn't really working. Yeah, because once I'm there and like get a cup of coffee, sit down, you're in that atmosphere. Like I open it up and like there's people around, and so there's like a background noise. It's just a lot easier.
Yeah, I love, and just to connect this to, to everybody else listening in the room, I think that this is a really good example of, yes, there are, these sabotaging thoughts, but then there's also, we're adding more work for ourselves. Like we are creating more friction by removing the things that actually support us, right? Like it's so much easier to get caught in these spiraling thoughts, without the supports that we're putting in place. And in your case, the support being like the coffee shop, Anyway, I would love to hear from you. What was the most useful piece of this? Like, what's your biggest takeaway from this conversation? Because we initially started talking about like, a consistent, like wanting a consistent writing schedule. Do you feel like this addresses that while also keeping in mind, like, the emotions that creep in of like the shame, the overwhelm, the pressure? Like, what's your takeaway? I want to hear.
No, it definitely does. I mean, it sheds some light on some of the reasons behind, and like you said, like we want to know why. I'm certainly like that. If I don't know why, I can't deal with something, then I certainly won't follow rules or do what people tell me to do, without it. So having that kind of like framework to understand it helps. It helps me to actually feel like I can make an informed decision and move forward. But also using that to like figure out a way to make it possible, removing the barriers, right? That's like in Atomic Habits. Doesn't he say something about like, if you can't get to the gym, put your gym shoes on, right? Like do the thing that makes it easier for you to do it. Start that process. So, if I can just get myself to a coffee shop, my suspicion is if I could do that 3 times a week, then you also just get used to writing again. Like once you get in that flow and you get used to writing again, it's easier to start no matter where you are. And I know that because that's when I finally wrote the book. I think I said, it's like when I finally got on meds and I was at 60,000 words, and that was the 3rd time. I'd started over 3 times. And so I went from 60,000 to 140,000 words in like 6 months. So yeah, like once you get into that flow, anyway, yes, to me, the biggest takeaway from this is finding like a practical way that I can actually make it, not just make it something that, oh, I can do this, but something that seems enjoyable, something that I can like build into a practice.
Yeah, acknowledging that like you can create the flow. Like you have the control to create the flow, and that like you don't have to force yourself to make this process work whenever, wherever, that you can be intentional about creating the flow and creating the circumstances for that creativity to strike. And I think that part of like the pressure, the shame, the overwhelm came from the fact that like you were kind of trying to make yourself do it, like kind of like white knuckle yourself, into like just do it, like you should just be able to do it. But it's like, yeah, I need the medication, I need my coffee shop, I need my $7 latte. Like these are the tools that enable us to feel the emotions that we want to feel. Like I want to feel determined, I want to feel supported, I want to feel inspired, right? Like, and the coffee shop atmosphere is inspiring to you, right? So we're setting up the conditions to feel the emotions that we want to feel.
Yeah, cool. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll take my laptop with me and I'll go tomorrow. And I mean, might as well just immediately try it before I talk myself out of it and or forget.
Yep. Try it. And this like, this doesn't have to be something that you commit to indefinitely, but just set a container of time. Like I'm going to do this for a month. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's like I can, and if it doesn't, if it doesn't work, I can just go right back to doing what I was doing before. Right? White
Yeah.
knuckling it. But let's just give it a month. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens. Where we go to a coffee shop 3 times a week immediately after drop off. We're gonna try it 12 times. And you could even create like a little visual, like a little, like where you have like 12 check boxes and you like check off, each one. So I don't know if that's like corny to you, but
Honestly, if I do this 12 times, I'll have the book done. I already know I will. But
Yeah.
once I get started, it's actually not that,
Yeah.
it's not that difficult. It's not that hard to I just have to get kicked into it again.
Well, let's try this. I can't wait to
Okay.
hear. I want to see a picture of the coffee shop tomorrow in school. It better be cute. All right, John. This was awesome. Oh man, that was so good. That especially, like this is why I love these are really hard topics to unpack for creatives because it's like a lot of us work for ourselves. And so yeah, we don't have these external, it's easy to flake on our own deadlines. But when it comes to, but then and then we start to feel like the guilt and the shame around that. But it's like, what if we can create the circumstances, the situations, right? The situation here being like coffee shops help propel me into these thoughts, these emotions. So like what is your coffee shop, right? Like what are the circumstances that you can create for yourself to generate the emotions that you want to tap into? All right. I would love to coach one more person if you guys have the time for it. Somebody else wants to jump in.
I just have a lot of the similar feelings about all of it as John was talking about.
Yeah.
I do, and it relates to work, but also personal life. But definitely work is kind of more pressing. I will like find anything and everything to do other than finish a task. And and a lot of it is related to like, and it's a wide variety of things because I'll do some design work, I'll do some research and writing and preparing presentations. And it seems like something will work for a little while, or I'll feel really good about, getting a certain amount of work done in a day. And then I just like don't, and I'm like, try to pump myself up and say like, that was great. You finished, you finished something, you worked for whatever, 8 hours straight. That's great. Crazy. And then like the coffee shop, I love going to different places to do work. And then it's like, I just like, I'm over it so quickly.
Yeah.
And I feel like it doesn't have the same punch. Like I try to switch different places to do work, whether, I have a lot of flexibility, so I can either come into my office or, go someplace else or work from home, whatever. And I definitely feel better if I'm doing something like some of my job involves auditing and being on site at places. And that's so much better. It's the second I have to like sit down and read something and complete something and, start it just like, and I like walk through all the things like, I know I just need to do it. Just do this much, just start it. Just like, and I know part of it is just like accountability and actually doing it. And then just finding these other reasons that I'm always prepared with like a reason. And I cut out for a while because I had to do something for work. But at the beginning when you or someone said it was like a different person, is like absolutely a different person. I'm like completely have no stress. And then as soon as something is due soon, it's like I am miserable and horrible to everybody. And I just like, and I keep trying to say, like, remind yourself of this. This is, you did this. This is, you knew this was going to happen. But it's like there's two different brains and they don't talk to each other.
So I want to hear more specifics about like an exact scenario, but one thing I want to mention too is like this urgency becomes really addicting. And by finding ourselves, so I would really recommend that book, or even just listening to her on a podcast, Tamara Rossier, Your Brain's Not Broken, because she talks about how we develop this dependence essentially on these high levels of dopamine in order to get something done. And it's like, the more we do it, it's like we build a greater and greater tolerance to it until we literally, it's like we're pressed up against like an impossible task in an impossible amount of time. And so it leads to burnout and paralysis. But essentially it's like we've been conditioned to do that our entire lives. And so we don't want to do something if it's, she calls it like a yellow task. Like we don't, want to do this assignment a week ahead of time because there's no urgency. We wait until, we have like this like, energy to propel us, and usually that energy is tied to like urgency and feeling like you're going to lose your job, or feeling like, you're going to let somebody down. It's like, we are so conditioned to working like that it's like we're creating those conditions for ourselves. And so developing awareness around that has been really helpful. It hasn't like solved everything, but it's at least helped me again, like to understand why I'm doing it, and to create, like these little, like even like external accountability. Like if your boss gives you an assignment that's due in a week, to ask like, hey, what can I give you tomorrow? Like, but anyway, I want to hear like, meaning like, what part of this can I give you tomorrow? But can you tell me a little bit about something right now that you are procrastinating on?
Yeah, a report. It's an accessibility universal design report. And part of it is that it was funded through a grant, so that it was like of no cost to the client. And I just keep putting it off because I know no one's going to check in on it. But I also know like it needs to get done eventually. And so I don't know, it's like been looming. And I'll think about it, and then I'll like put it out of my mind, and then I'll add it to a to-do list, and then I'll just make different to-do lists, and then I'll add it again. And then, other stuff will rise to importance, and I just like keep pushing it to the side. But that could go for like almost anything, any task that I have to do for work, or even, not even just work. It's just work is like the one that I would like to at least get under wraps first.
Yeah. So this report that you have to write, what does it feel like? So like when you sit down, like say to do this report, what is the emotion that's coming up for you? Like, what does that feel like for you? Is it like dread?
It is dread, and it's also like a little bit of just not knowing exactly where to start a little bit. Like I've rewritten out the notes a few times on items that I need to incorporate, or how I would like to theoretically organize it, because it doesn't have a template right now. And I think because, part of it is that I'd like to include some information, but maybe not all the information, because I'd like them to eventually pay for some of it. And so it's sort of just, I do this often, and I'm trying to be more conscious of it, but it's like where I just think of like a million different things. Like, okay, I don't want to start there because maybe I don't want to include all that, or I don't want to organize it like this report because that report is really not very similar. And then and then like something else, crosses my mind, and then I just stop doing it.
Yeah.
Because I just don't feel like anyone is checking in on it. And I know that that's like, not a good response, but
If no
that's,
one,
yeah.
no, go ahead.
No, that's kind of the all of it is that if I don't have someone like telling me it needs to get done, and even when I do, to your point, like being addicted to that pressure and that stress of just like needing to get it done immediately, I just let things hang. And I just don't even feel stressed about them. I'll occasionally feel stressed and then I'll push it out of my mind. And it's really messed up because it definitely feels like a sabotage, like, like this isn't, if someone was telling me the same thing, I would be like, you just need to get it done. Why do you keep stopping? Why don't you just start somewhere?
So let me ask you this. Is there something at work that you regularly do on time? Like maybe like not 100% of the time, but like most of the time you submit it, when you're supposed to, like, you said like you were doing something for work before, like, what is that thing?
Mm-hmm. That was a presentation. So like when I have to present things, there's like this stress of making sure that it's completed so that I know what I'm talking about. But even with presentations, I'll wait until, if it's something I haven't done before, I'll like wait until the last minute to do the research and put it together. And, or if whoever is getting the presentation wants it, 5 days early, then like 6 days before I will start it.
Mhm.
And I just keep doing this, and I feel like I should be able to not do this anymore, because even when I talk about it, it doesn't make sense. When I say what I'm doing, it doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't know, why can't I just start it earlier? I know that I'm not happy with the result. It ends and it's over, and typically it's fine and there's no real big crisis. And I don't know if that's just me like justifying it after the fact or what, but so if there's something that I'm presenting in front of people that I have some pressure to do that. If something is due, I have a meeting with someone, I'll have stuff prepared for that.
Okay.
But if I don't hear anything, if like no one's calling me about something or emailing me about something, or I just kind of don't do it.
And is this report like, this might be a silly question, but like, does it need to get done? Do you actually?
Yeah, it does need to get, well, it would look bad for us if we didn't do it, since we offered it and are providing it. But it is also the type of thing that I know that it's, it's not something that anyone is particularly waiting for. It's for like it's for a theater company. They do summertime theater, and it was basically an accessibility thing of their site. And I know no one's around now that summer's over. I know that no one's thinking about it, and so that's part of it. But that's not like all. I could think of other tasks that I've done the same thing for that are more significant, more important. Just.
I want to ask you a question that might sound kind of ridiculous, but just stick with me. Why is it actually a problem that you are waiting until the last minute to do things? Like, when you have to meet with somebody, like you get it done. When you have to have like a presentation or like a client meeting, like you're getting there, you're meeting, the requirements. So why is it actually a problem for you?
Because I would eventually like to, well, a couple of reasons. One, I'd like to eventually work for myself. And so in order to do that, you do kind of have to have some accountability, and you do want your clients to be, satisfied, and so that they hire you again, things like that. You don't get a bad reputation. I live in Buffalo, New York. It's a small city. Everybody kind of knows each other. But also just that I'm, personally, I'm getting more and more tired. And so when I do this stuff at the last minute and I'm up all night or I'm up until 3, like it's just much harder for me than it used to be. And the result is worse because I'm tired. It's more uncomfortable and painful the next day than it ever was. And so I think that's also part of it. And I have a daughter now, and I just feel like by putting everything off, it just, you know, it impacts whatever free time I have with her in the evenings or on the weekends. And then I'm like feeling bad about that throughout the week, you know, like whenever, you know, I should be kind of when I could potentially have time with her. And I'm doing something that I could have done earlier in the day when she was not home. That makes me feel like, you know, makes me feel like garbage.
Worse. This is so relatable, Krista, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I mean, people are chiming in the chat like, thank you for bringing this up. And I want everybody who's listening to this, I mean, we've almost all of us have struggled with something very similar, so I want you to be answering these questions for yourselves too. So, you know, in her response, you know, I asked her, why is this a problem for you? And so she said, like, well, I want to work for myself one day, and so I have to develop these skills, you know, of doing something that I said I was going to do and following through with clients, you know, when there's not an external, you know, deadline. I want to make time for my daughter. You know, I don't want to be doing work when I'm supposed to be spending time with her. So now, what would the ideal situation look like? Like, what would you ideally want to do? Like, for this report, for example, I'm going to use this report, you know, as an example. When would you like to have that completed? I mean, I know it sounds like you would have liked to have had it completed like last week, but now moving forward, if there was a part, you know, if a part of your brain that would think like, oh, it would be lovely to have this report done by, let's say, Friday. Like, what is the timeline here that you would be like, I would love to get this off of my plate by this day? What would that be?
Probably next Friday.
So next Friday would just
comes up is that we'll get more projects, and then this always happens like where everything just like crashes in the same time, and I feel horrible and stressed and like, and then start like, you know, kicking myself because this happens every fucking time. Like, what you do every time? Why are you still doing this? And yeah, and so when more projects come in that are of higher priority and I have this other stuff hanging, it just adds to it.
Nightmare. Yeah. But so realistically though, let's say that more projects do come up between now and next Friday. Would it still be doable to finish this report, even just like a B- version?
It would still be doable, like similar to what John was saying about like if you just sat down and did, like, yeah, like I could, logically know that I could sit down and do it.
Yeah. Like you could even do it today.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't, but although today I do want to finish something. I do have to finish something else before tomorrow morning. But yes, that is like, that's exactly it. It's like, I know that I could, and then once I do it, then it's like, what were you doing? Why didn't you just do this 2 months ago? It's ridiculous.
Right. It does. And that I would work on your self-talk. Like I would make that a there's a lot of gaslighting. I mean, dang, you know, there's a lot of gaslighting, and I it's so relatable, but cut that shit out. Like it's really not serving you. It, you know, this idea of like of beating yourself up for the thing, it's only going to add to that mountain that you have to, you know, scale. And so I think that would be like the first piece of this. But then the second piece is, okay, so let's say like in a perfect world, this report would be out of your hands. You would never have to think about it again, you know, as of next Friday. Let's use next Friday as like the deadline. So why do we want that? Why do we want the report done next Friday? Like, why do we want it out of our hands?
I don't want to keep adding it to-do lists and to keep like when I think about it at night, like what, okay, or, you know, what do I have to do tomorrow? What do I have to do today? Whenever I'm thinking about tasks that need to be done. I am like so sick of constantly adding the same things. Like just seems like whatever that one thing is, or like several things are, just like constantly re-adding the same thing. And then I get like annoyed with to-do lists because I just keep, it's like the same list and
Mhm.
like nothing's changed. And like, well, just like used a different pen to like write it someplace else, but it's like the same thing. And I would love, and because it does feel great to like check something off and be done with something. And I feel like I can only do that when I'm like in a rush to do it, which like being addicted to the stress of like doing something quickly is very identifiable. That is like how I get things done. But yeah, even in a personal now, like my daughter's birthday was last week. I wanted to make this really cool cake. I started making it the day of the party, and then like it was taking much longer. And so I just bought a cake. Like it was like one of those things that you're like, all right, cool. I can't even like make like I like, and I was gonna do it the night before, and then I was like, no, I don't need to do it. I don't need to.
I
It's
have time.
fine. I
Yeah.
can do it.
So
And so like yeah, so I just threw out a whole cake. Like
Mhm.
it was just like a um I do this with so many things, and it's like seems like it's magnifying as I get older.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so relatable. I mean, we all love you, Krista. This is
Oh,
throwing at a cake. Yeah, it's because we didn't have enough and we should have, and like knowing that it's like, well, we could have just saved ourselves the stress and just bought her a cake, from this jump, you
yeah,
know?
the cake was fine. It was,
Yeah. And she
but
loved
it
it.
was,
Sure.
yeah, it was fine. And it was just, I would, and it's this, it is illustrative of so many other things because like I wanted it to be like this fully like, no additives, no like all these no toxic ingredients, and like, getting all these like effing sprinkles from wherever the hell you need to go, and like all these different ingredients that whatever. And then to be like, we'll just throw it out. Like, I can't do this. I have people coming over shortly. Like, I'll just go to the store and buy one. So
It's
like all of that combined time, and then I'm like sick about it. Like all this time I spent putting into this thing that like now is really a waste of time. Like, I do think like when John was talking about things, writing or something like that being a waste of time, I do try to like not think of stuff like that as a waste of time, or at least when I'm talking to other people and talking to them about it. I do think like you never know what's going to help you in the future, or like if it's a book or if it's something that's completed, like if you could even use it as a reference in the future, or like you just don't know. But I think sometimes when I like start to like throw money at things, then I'm like very much like sick about it because I've now spent all this money on something that all really doesn't have a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you want to feel? Like, what is the emotion that you want to feel when you're doing the thing? Like, because you mentioned like feeling, like this is a waste of time. Like, you're feeling annoyed. How would you want to
Yeah.
feel about it? Like does ease sound right, or purposeful, or how would you?
Ease sounds good. And and this is like, not emblematic of, whatever, I'll just say it, I don't care. But when I was younger and I was a server at a restaurant, like, and this was fully like recreational, would sometimes take Xanax. That was the best. That was like a dream. And I'm not, I haven't taken it in years, and I never even took it on a regular basis. But if anyone ever worked in a restaurant, it's everywhere. So you can get whatever you want. But that's not something that is, again, like anything like that, it's not something that would work long term. So it's not like I've ever thought like, oh, I just need a prescription to that. But the way that I felt throughout, like the idea that I wasn't working any less hard, and I've thought about this a lot since because it was so shocking. Like you're working the same amount, you're putting in the same amount of effort, you just aren't stressed. Like it's not like I was slower, it's not like I didn't understand what was going on. It just like and so like to get to a point like that where it's like I know this is a task, I know I need to do work, I just, you know, can slowly go through and do it without being like, I don't know when this is going to be done, I don't know if I can do something else in the meantime because this is like really boring and I can't even focus on it anymore, I don't want to think about it anymore. So that is what I would long for, which I know is like unrealistic. It's just one example. It was like these few times that I was and they were like really busy nights. There were no problems. It was just, how can I get to a point where I can do this stuff without constantly like thinking about what I'm doing and thinking about whether it's annoying or thinking about whether I'm bored or whether, you know, like,
how do I just the monkey mind, they call it. So what's interesting here is what you said is like, oh, that sounds like it's impossible or something you said, but, and I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I do think that it's going to take some time. You know, these are like, you know, neural connections in our brains, but they can be rewired. But one thing that I want to propose to you is like, okay, so you want to have this, you have this feeling of like annoyance and like, it seems pointless. And you're wanting the feeling of ease. We could actually create the feeling of ease, even if you are doing something last minute. Like, even if you are, you know, behind on something, even if you haven't submitted this report, even if, you know, you're baking a cake for your daughter, like, it's not the actual report that is making you calm. Like, it's not the time that is making you calm, it's the thought. So, and I'm not saying that like we have to sit there, but it's just something to think about, is that like, you know, I wonder if you're trying to change the circumstance of like always doing things last minute, when in reality, maybe we can think about the emotion a bit more. And getting ourselves to think about, okay, not the actual report itself, but it's like the emotion that we have around it. So, and just make sure like we're separating it in our mind. So it's not the like the time that we're spending doing on this stuff. You know, it's not, you know, the fact that we're spending an hour on it that's making us feel flustered and annoyed. It's because we're thinking like, oh, I did it again. I can't believe I'm waiting to the last minute. You know, this is not going to look good for me, for my reputation. This is, you know, how am I ever going to work for myself if I can't even, you know, it's like, it's all these stories. So I want you to walk me through it a little bit more. And I know it seems like I'm like harping on this a little bit, but I want you to walk me through like the timeline of this thing. Like, let's say, would it make sense for you to work on it tomorrow?
Yeah, I could work on it tomorrow.
For like an hour or 30 minutes?
For an hour, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So walk me through, like, what time of day would that happen? Would it make sense to tackle it like first thing or sometime in the afternoon? Like, what is the conversation in your head before it's time to work on this report?
Yeah. The conversation in my head is probably like, I don't want to do this. This is dumb. I want to do something else. If I'm being honest, it's probably like, nah, I don't want to do this. And then after the fact, like when it's not done, I'm like, oh my God. Or if I have to like verbalize to someone that it's not done, I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll probably, you know, think like, well, I could, you know, post this thing for work online. I could, you know, respond to a couple of emails that I haven't responded to. I could order something online, you know, buy something. There are always like a million things I want to do around our house. And so that like I'm constantly thinking, if I didn't have this house, an old house, and if I didn't have it and I didn't want to do all these things to it, that would like free up mental load, even though that's not really true. Like I definitely would just think about other things in place of that. But that is where, yeah, that's where it will go. And I'll like start to make a to-do list, and then I'll think of other things I'm going to do. And then I'll open it up, and then I'll be like, where were the notes for it? Where is the report itself? Is it on like the box drive or is it on the share drive? Or was I working on this on my PC and now like the formatting is going to be off on my Mac? Like that's, yeah, if I'm going like, if I'm trying to be very particular, like specific, that's probably all of the things. And then it would be like an hour. And then I'd be like, well, I have to go pick up my daughter in like 20 minutes. Or I could just like call my mom right now. You know, like I definitely like, I have some self-awareness about how like, like tricky I am about like not doing things.
Yeah. No, we're very, very good at avoiding the things we don't want to do. And I want everyone to think about this too, and whether you're here live or on the recording, but think about like what are the stories that you're telling yourself, right? Like what, for Krista, it's like, I don't want to do this. There are other things that I could be doing right now. I could be using my time better. I could make better use of my time, right? Like I can use this hour to be productive somehow. Tell me why it would feel amazing to have this report done, even if you don't really want to do it.
It would just be, it does feel great to finish a task and to just be done with it, to never have to like communicate again. It's also a dread of like even sending it to them at this point, because it's been a couple of months, even though they've never asked. It's not, again, like it's not something that I think they're waiting for, but it just like, even the idea of like sending the email and being like, hey, sorry, I haven't talked to you in a couple months. Here's that report that I told you I'd do.
Yeah.
And so like that too, it's that, that will happen a lot with things that I put off, because if I want it to be reviewed by someone, then it's like very embarrassing to be like, oh yeah, this thing that I asked you about months ago, can you take a look at it? Because I finally finished.
Yeah.
And so then that will also like definitely kind of like put a stall on things when I start to consider that part of it. But yes, the being done, the having this off of my plate, the not thinking about it every time I hear like like it's at a large park in the area. Every time I hear this park name, it's like, oh yeah, I still have to do that report.
Right. Yeah. So I think that there's a couple ways that we could play around with this, but one of the things is I think, the idea of like, well, how are they going to take it? Like when this is done, I think that we can cross that bridge when it's finished, right? I think the most important part here is like removing the friction. And this is the thing, like our minds automatically jump to like, like every possible like, result of like without the task even being done, which creates even more friction. But let's just try to zone in on like how we can remove the friction of starting this report. And maybe like you mentioned, it might, and I know the like walking through what could happen is so important, because it's like you're preparing yourself for it. And you even mentioned it's like, okay, I think I could do it in an hour, but then it's like it might even take me an hour to just get set up. And so what if we bank that in as like part of it? It's like I know that it's going to take me an hour to figure out, like, is it on my Mac? Is it on my work computer? Where is this thing? Like, where is this file? Like, what if we accept that is a part of it? Like, what if we accept that we can't just jump right in? Like, what if we accept that we need to get our bearings? Like we need to set ourselves up. And so what if we wrap our minds around the fact that it's like, actually, this is going to take 2 hours, but I know that I will have it done. Like, what if we play around with that thought a little bit? Like, what if you just accept that, like, yeah, this is going to feel like shit. Like, I'm going to need to, like it's what time would you start working on this?
In like 9:20.
Okay. So it's 9:20. I got my coffee. I'm sitting at my desk. I need to open up my computer, like what are the actions? Like I gotta
Mhm.
open up my computer, I gotta find the file. Like what else? You have to like find an email or something.
Probably just find the file, find where I have all the notes. They're
Right.
probably in a couple of different places.
Mhm.
It's also part of it. I'm not always best with organizing my notes. And yeah, and then finding, probably a template that I'd like to work from.
Okay. Okay. So we need to find our notes. We need to find, so these are all of like the actions that, shoot, this pen, try it out now. But the actions that we need to take tomorrow at 9:20 a.m. are we need to, open laptop, find notes. What were some of the other things?
Find a template. That's
Find a-
another like obstacle that often when I start to think of templates or how I want, what I'm trying to base a report off of, then I like go down a rabbit hole of looking at all these other things that I know are not helping me, but I can't like decide on just like picking a template. Just
Could
pick
you
it.
put this in a container? Like spend 20 minutes
Yeah, that's a good
finding
idea.
a template.
Mhm.
Spend 20 minutes just gathering up all of my notes.
Mhm.
That we're putting this in a container.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, and this would be perfect for like a Pomodoro. So it's like we're spending 20 minutes just gathering all of our supplies, and then we spend 20 minutes, just deciding on a template, and then
Mhm.
whatever template we landed on in the 20 minutes, like that's just the one that we're gonna go with. Okay. And so one thing that I want you to think about, if one thing that I think you need in here is I think you're gonna need a pause as well.
Mhm.
So I think that you're gonna need a pause to acknowledge that you're making this transition to working on the report.
Mhm.
So do you know like what a pause would even look like?
Not really. I think sometimes I will try to like give myself that, but then I just end up scrolling online and it's a horrible idea.
Yeah.
And that
So
never works.
right, exactly. And so it's acknowledging that like this is gonna feel like complete garbage. Like I'm not gonna
Mhm.
want to do that. So literally it's like the pause, practicing that positive self-talk tomorrow at 9:20,
Mhm.
saying like, okay, this is, I'm going to get into like, am I willing to open up my laptop? Am I
Mhm.
willing to find a template? Right? Like it's this pause of like when we're doing something, when we're about to do something that we don't want to do. Like for me, it's like my emails, right? It's like, am I willing to just open up my Gmail? Am I willing to open up the first email? Like, am I willing
Mhm.
to do this for 10 minutes? And I can say, yes, okay. I know, that I'm going to be kicking and screaming over this right now, but it's like, what if we allow ourselves to pause? Like, what's our emotion that's going to allow us to pause? Like, what would feel good to you? Like, what emotion can you create to allow you to pause to transition into doing this? It doesn't have to be like ecstatic or like elated, but could we try on like what seems doable?
Yeah. I guess just, you know, looking forward to taking a break and not looking at a screen or like forcing myself to look away from the screen. It always feels better when I do, but it is hard to, at the beginning I mentioned that lawsuit with Facebook, and it is so accurate, and I'm starting to feel more and more that like it's really a problem. Scrolling is really a problem, and it's also hard for me to just like cut it off, to like put the phone down, to like stop fully. And even when I'm telling myself like you need to do this because it does feel good, it's like it's like a break,
Yeah.
like a full shift. But it is hard to just like put it down, or like before bed, it's hard to just put it down. And it always feels great when I do. But so maybe just that like sense of like relaxation, like that, like calm.
Yeah. Calm. Calm. I love that. I love that. You know, or even like if calm is not within reach, maybe even just like willing, right? Like willing. Oh, are you willing to put your phone in another room?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it. Like part of the like as you're walking to another room to put your phone down, you are doing this pause. So put phone in another room and you allow yourself. I think this is the hardest part for ADHDers is like you're allowing yourself to have this tantrum essentially. So we feel this willingness and we breathe through the tantrum, right? And the thought that we can have is this is the part where my brain throws a fit. This this is the part, this is that part. Nothing's gone wrong here. This is just how it works. It's supposed to go this way, right? I'm supposed to be annoyed by this thing that seems kind of pointless and nobody's asking me for it anyway. This is the part where my brain looks for other things to do. This is the part where I find other things that seem more important, right? But I just breathe through it. It's I don't know if you were you here on the first call when we talked about surfing our emotions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the part where we breathe through it. This is the part where I remind myself, like, I want to do this so that I have time for myself later. I want to do this so that I have time for my daughter later. I want to do this so I have that that sense of relief that this is done, that this is off my plate, that this is, we remind ourselves like, this is for me. This is not for my client. This is not for anybody else. Like, this is for me. I want this feeling of calm. I want this feeling of willingness, so this is what we want. We want to feel like the result is that we feel relief over having this thing done. And this can apply to this report. It can apply to anything, that you find yourself in this situation. It's like you remind yourself like, oh, this is the part. This is the part where I throw this fit, right? Like this is this is not a problem. This is not a problem. So imagine all of this going on in your brain. Like, how does it feel when you walk through it?
Yeah. Well, I think actually doing that will feel amazing. I think it historically has just been a block where I just don't do it. I know it's what I should do. I know I should take a break. I know I should like take some deep breaths and like, I mean, I do think, especially since like that, trying to identify the emotion was really eye-opening. Even though like I wouldn't say I've put it into practice much, it was at least eye-opening to say like, oh yeah, I guess I'm like anxious about this, or I'm just like dreading this because I don't want to sit here, or I want to continue to like listen to a podcast and I can't focus and listen to the podcast. It's hard for me to like turn something off once it's on. But I think, if I practice it more, or at least if I say like I will do it once, like maybe I could just start with like trying to do it tomorrow, just do it once, like where I fully sit down and like do not do anything for those 2 hours other than like those tasks listed, and turn like my phone on do not disturb, and like really try to I think the other thing that was very helpful was like the persistence instead of consistency, because there are things that have worked in the past that then just sort of stop working. But I also like, it's not like I put a big effort into like, once it stopped working, it's not like I think about that much or revisit them or say like I should start doing this again. And so I think if I can commit to once and at least try to see what that's like.
I love that. It's exactly, let's just try it once, right? Like we
Mhm.
talked about with John's example, it's like, okay, like let's just try it for a month. We can go even more micro than that. Let's just try this once, right? Like let's just try
Mhm.
once. Like, because so often what happens is we're so busy forcing ourselves to do things and pushing our body to do the thing and making ourselves do the thing, as opposed to allowing the tantrum to just happen, to allow
Yeah.
resistance, allow the
Yeah.
resistance, to tell ourselves like, this is actually, this is normal, this is okay, that this is,
Yeah.
and it's also going to feel, I want the result, because it's going to feel so good to be able to listen to a podcast later. It's going to feel so good to spend time with my daughter. It's going to feel so good to just have this thing
Mhm.
off of my plate. It's going to feel awesome. And so that
Mhm.
would be like what I would leave you with, is like, let's just give this a try. Let's just try it once, to allow the resistance and say like, you're
Mhm.
allowed to be here. The resistance is allowed to
Mhm.
be, and maybe even like put like a little post-it note, right? Like uh, something like you're allowed to hate it.
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
this is supposed to suck, like this part of your day, not the whole
Mhm.
day, but this
Yeah.
part of your day is allowed to suck.
Mhm.
'Cause even as an entrepreneur, like even, you know, when you are working for yourself one day, like there are going to be things that are going to suck just like
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's allowing the resistance to be there. It's allowed to be. I'm not
Yeah.
bad for feeling this resistance. I'm not wrong for feeling this resistance. Like some things just suck. Like you can't, you know, like hack your way into enjoying this task. And I think that's part of like the issue, is it's like, you know, it's like, well, look for the positives. It's like, well, sometimes there aren't any. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the task just sucks. Like I don't have to like it. I don't have
Yeah. Yeah.
to. Oh man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Okay.
bringing.
Oh yeah.
I know that
Thanks
was
for
like really painful.
discussing it.
Sure.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's also, it's just, it is embarrassing. It is like, it's an embarrassing thing to, not that I feel embarrassed in this, you know, this group, but it is like an embarrassing thing to acknowledge to yourself too. Like, you know, if I sit down and actually think about how long some things have taken me in the past, like that are, you know, silly, or if someone were to actually like find out that,
Oh,
I mean, it is. So it, yeah, it's,
how relatable is that? I mean, I'm sure
yeah,
so many of you guys are like thinking the same thing. It's like, if somebody only knew.
yeah,
And it's like we
yeah.
think we're the only ones that do these embarrassing things. That
Hmm.
only knew, if you only knew. And it's like we hold that's again more gaslighting. Is it's like, this is so embarrassing, like I must be the only one, and it's, you're clearly not. I mean, look at the chat.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I just looked. Yeah, it is very helpful to know that other people identify with the same kinds of things. And it was, and I like assumed it, and I realized, you know, putting the pieces together with ADHD makes sense. But it is still like, how do you work with that instead of just looking at it like, oh, that's why. Okay. Like, what do I need to do now? Now that I know that that's the case. Um, and so, yeah, it's, yeah, it is, it has been a frustrating few years, but I'm sure a lot of other people feel that same way.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man.
but thank you so much.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I'm so glad to hear that, you know, you're willing to try this. And I really can't wait to hear. Seriously, please post it tomorrow. I want to hear about John's coffee shop experience. I want to hear about your report tomorrow. I would love, you know, just to hear. And even if you don't get to it, right? But just remember this, like, I'm
Hmm.
feel this resistance. But thank you so much for bringing that up.
Hmm.
Oh man, so
Yeah,
beautiful.
thanks. No problem.
All right, guys.
You know,
Good to
Anna,
get
you
it
did
off
all
my
right too.
chest.
Okay.
What's
You did
that?
okay
Yeah,
as
thank
well.
you.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah, for real.
thank you so
No, I
much.
mean, like it's really hard to like express all the things that you did, Krista, and obviously you're amazing. So you know that. And same, John. Like I feel it. The reason you can't see me right now is I just got out of the show. So Anyway, yeah, but thank you both for sharing that. I mean, like it's really hard, and just know that you are 100% not alone.
Absolutely.
100%.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you,
It's
Anna.
good to know.
Gosh, thank you guys. All right, so I think we all could use a well-deserved break. Go see some sunshine. I just want to remind you again, next week, bonus session. You don't have to commit your entire day to me, but or to each other. But I just, I wanted to offer like a bonus session just to do like another round of live group coaching to put some of these things into practice and just to see like what come up now, like what's coming up for you this week. I would love to coach some more of you next Thursday, 10 a.m. And then I will also post the details about like the membership and some of the other things. I wrote down a bunch of things that I wanted to share. The Brainwave app. I have a couple books I want to share. But I will post all that in school. And again, like I posted a little short tutorial this week, but school, anybody can write a thread in school. So it's not just me. Like you don't have to wait for me to start a thread. Anybody can start a thread. So, and that's actually why I have, it's like, there's the community piece and there's general discussion, but there's also, you can ask a question, you can do steer maps, you can do wins, like any tiny, little wins that you want to share. I would love to see it. So you can actually put those things in there. You can start your own threads because sometimes it's hard to dig through. Like I know some people were still commenting in like the introduce yourself, but it's sometimes hard to keep track of like the threads within the thread. So what, like everybody's welcome to start a thread. So, and we still, we have plenty of time. It's October 26th. The group is going to stay open, for this cohort until November 12th. So there's still going to be lots of connections made and lots of coaching is going to be happening. But all right, guys, with that, I'm going to leave you and I will see you in school and next week.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.